Hey Al, I just wanted to double check that you guys can hear me for when we're doing the presentation later this evening.
I thank you, because I'm kind of doing my own sound check. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you great.
Excellent. Your camera's coming in good. So I'm having an awful hair day. So,
Oh.
you know, let's lighten the mood here for a moment. So everybody told me moving to Colorado, and I love Colorado. You have no idea how much I love this state, but you'll love the wildlife. Well, 2 weeks ago, we had a stray raven come to our house and befriend my wife. This raven is wild. It needed some nurturing because it was wounded, and now the raven won't leave after it's all healed up, and it likes my house and everything about my house, and it leaves an absolute mess in the trash. Raven crap a lot, and I mean it's a lot. My deck is like whitewashed.
Oh no.
We're trying to get rid of the raven. Now we're working on getting in the raven. Enter Mr. Skunk. And now yesterday, Mr. Skunk decides to move in, and he just doesn't move in. He sprays my house.
The house itself?
My house, my property is just sprayed, and it is just loaded with skunk, just skunk. So the deer are one thing, the lizards are kind of cool, but this is getting a little bit much this year. So I don't know if it's an impact from the drought, but wow. My wife just texted me and she says, "What are you going to do about this?" And I'm like, "Oh man."
Oh man. That's the only response to that.
Yeah, I don't know what to do, and because the raven still won't leave, but now we got a skunk to deal with too. So what's tomorrow? I don't know. Tune in.
Tune in. The Vandenbrink Wildlife Hospital.
Pretty much. And if that skunk's got a sore toe, I'm not going to nurture it back to health. It's going to have to fend for itself.
That seems fair.
Now that raven kind of wore out its welcome, but that raven got so friendly, it would land on your neck.
No way.
It would land on your shoulder. It would sit on your head, and it would just like it was a house pet. So, but it really started liking worms and cheese and anything else that you would give it. So, yeah.
Now it's got the hookup.
Yeah, now it's got the hookup, and now and its wing was all boogered up where it couldn't fly, but now it can fly around and it can get away, but now it doesn't want to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we get for trying to be, polite and helping. So. All right, we got people rolling in. We're gonna have to give them a few more minutes here. So
that sounds good. I'm trying to think if I have any wildlife stories. I think in Denver they're a little bit fewer and far between, but I did see 2 coyotes at the park the other day, so that's about as close to wildlife as I get.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a little creek that runs through. Creek is a bit strong. There's like a drainage that runs through the park by my house, and the coyotes were just like slinking right along. So it was pretty cool right at sunset.
Yeah. Last year we still got some folks kind of still chiming in here. So last year I actually encountered a red wolf. I don't know if it's a desert wolf or whatever, out in the middle in the desert near Green River, Utah. And I've never seen an animal like that. It was a huge animal. It was a big dog, but it was fox red.
That's crazy.
I've never seen one. I don't know if that thing was just cruising through, but we've never seen it again. Just some weird stuff out in the desert that happens. So, all right, 1, 2.
Alden, I'm putting up the agenda for you, if that's okay.
Yep, I was just counting the folks here to see who we all got, if we got a quorum here yet. So, we got 16 of us right now, I see. So I think that's a quorum.
I'm going to go back to lurk mode until it's my turn.
Yeah.
Right. Looks like you got a bumper hay crop this year.
That was a prior hay crop, Ken.
Sorry to hear that.
Okay, I think I counted 16. We had base roundtable members, so that is half. I'm hoping that's enough, and maybe there's others that will chime in. I see we're up to 34 now, so that list is growing on who's all here. Megan, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
Okay, so I have you as a co-host too, so you have your tools there in front of you. So
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
No. All right. Well, let's kind of get this thing going. I know we have we don't have a huge agenda, but I know we do have a good agenda for sure with us wrapping up our BIP. I know the Big River Committee's got some information they want to talk with you about. And then we've got our other standing committees that are here to talk as well. So and so I'm just going to kind of jump in here and kind of get this meeting called to order so we can kind of get this thing started. So as we get going with our roll call, I know we do have a new individual that was appointed by the Great Northern Water Conservancy District. Casey Green is joining us tonight. So after we're done doing roll call, I would like to round back to Casey and give her an opportunity to kind of introduce herself to the group. So, and then hopefully looking at next month, we can kind of put a face to the name and get a little bit more familiar with her. So, and I know we've got other folks that have kind of joined us over the past 18 months that it sure would be nice to be able to get and really get to know these folks a little bit better so we can continue building upon our cohesive relationship that our roundtable's got. So with that, Megan, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you right now so we can do a roll call for ourselves here, if you would, please.
Okay, perfect. I'll just go ahead and go down the list here. Doug Munger.
Here. Yeah, here. Megan,
I think we lost
Megan. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see.
Plan B.
That's where I'm going right now, to our Yampa-White-Green website real quick. Okay, so, okay, Doug Munger here. Tom Gray.
Here.
Steve Hinkemeier.
Here.
Thank you. Al Van Brink here. Ken Brenner.
Here.
Mike Camblin. Okay. Sean Welder. Sean, I thought I seen you roaming around here a little bit ago.
Yeah, I'm here. No skunks to report, but I'm here.
Thanks. You want one? Jay Sheehan. Okay, Tim Winkler. Nope. Hunter Causey.
Here.
Thank you. Callie Hendrickson. Thought I seen Callie. Hello. She's on here. She's just not responding. Brian Hodge.
Yeah.
Thank you. How you doing, Brian? Will Myers.
Here.
Okay. Kent Ventries. Frank Alphone.
Present.
Thank you. How you doing, Frank? Good to hear you again. Rich Thompson. Okay. Jackie Brown.
Here.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Jeff Comstock.
Yes, Al, I'm here.
Thank you. Doug Davis.
Present.
Chuck Whiteman.
Here.
Deirdre McNabb. Okay, Chuck Groby.
Here.
Travis Day. Bill Badaraka.
Here.
Vince Wilczek. He's not here. T. Wright Dickens. I thought he was here. He's still there. Okay. Patrick O'Toole. Okay, I don't see Pat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Yeah, we got enough people. We're ready to rock and roll. So, Casey, and Casey Green. I'm sorry I missed you there. I forgot about that. Casey.
That's all right. I'm here.
Okay. And Casey, I'm going to let you have the floor for a little bit because you're the newest member to our Basin Roundtable and representing a district here that's kind of getting their feet back on the ground. So if you would like to introduce yourself a little bit, have at it.
Well, as you said, my name is Casey Green. I'm brand new to this. I am originally a Wyoming girl. I grew up in northwest corner of Wyoming in Powell, and then met my husband at the University of Wyoming. So many of you know Chad Green. We have cattle and sheep here. I've been in Craig going on 20 years now. And I recently, well, I guess it's been a year ago now, I took the job as district manager for the Colorado First Conservation District as well. So I'm excited to be here, and I have a lot of learning to do. So I probably won't say much for a while.
Well, that's okay. But we're always welcoming new people, and fresh minds and fresh ideas are always welcome here. So we've got a good variety, and you're one of those new ones that we really appreciate and glad to have you on board. So don't be afraid to jump in. I know nobody else here is afraid to usually share their thoughts. So that's kind of the beauty of this group. So we usually come up with some really good compromises and work towards collaboration. So anyway, welcome aboard.
All right, thank you.
If you're not speaking, please mute yourself so we can reduce some of the background noise, please. Let's see. So next item is approve and modify the agenda. Do we have any modifications to the agenda, or are we ready to approve it?
Mr. Chairman, this is Ken Brenner.
Okay.
Was wondering, we have a resolution came out of a discussion at the Big River Committee on Monday night. How would you like where would you like to place that in the agenda?
We have a Big River Committee at item 8A. Could we make this 8AI as an action item under the Big River Committee update, or is there some other place that we should put it under, like 7A or 7B, excuse me?
I would defer to you.
Yeah, this is Jeff Al. It's fine. We can sure do it under our committee. We won't need all 15 minutes for sure.
Okay. And if the group is okay with that, I mean, we're going to approve this or whatnot. So any other additions or corrections we're ready to move forward with the modify or approving the agenda.
So this is Munger. I guess the only comment about that resolution is it's supposed to be, reports of standing committees and the Big River Committee. And so I guess we are inserting an action item in there just so everybody's aware of that. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the amended agenda, adding the resolution on the Big River Committee report.
Okay. We have a motion to add that as an action item under the committee, standing committee report.
Second,
Thank you.
Brenner.
Brenner's got a second. Okay. All in favor? Other input? I'm sorry, folks. That skunk's on my mind yet. So all in favor of approving this signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay? Okay, hearing is none, approved. So let's see. We have to approve and review and approve the minutes from the May 12th meeting. Mr. Brenner, I know you had some comments that you sent to me earlier here. Have those been adequately included within the minutes to your satisfaction?
Alden, while he's unmuting, this is Deirdre McNabb, sorry to be late, but I did have a slight concern about one item on the agenda, which was not the agenda, the minutes, 6F, which by the way, I thought were excellently done by our new secretary. But it says there that it was discussing a storage project, which the West Fork Dam, which said that the Roundtable supported it. In fact, I just want to note that the letter that was written specifically made a point of saying that we are not supporting the reservoir itself, and this is in the language, we are supporting the process of reviewing the reservoir. And I do think that language is very important, and I would be concerned to see the minutes go forward with an expression that the Roundtable is supporting the reservoir. So if that change could be made, I would support the minutes.
So you're looking for a point of clarification on that, more or less, making sure that
Thank
that's
you.
very clear in the minutes. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all precisely. Thank you.
Yep. Any comments upon that, or is that acceptable? Okay. Anything else?
Yes, Alden. Specifically under 6C and 6D, and this is a nitpicky thing, so please accept my apology. These are good minutes. I believe we want to say that on line 8, that Doug Munger moved to amend the bylaws. And the same thing in D, Doug Munger moved to approve the committee request. So if we could use that language instead, I believe that would be appropriate. And then the other thing was under reports of applicable standing committees, DWR update, the Yamcolo Reservoir is, I believe, spelled YAMCOLO.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's a simple typo. So, Megan, were you adequately able to reflect those and get those as part of your minutes?
Yes, I think so. So just to clarify, 6F, we're adding supporting process of reviewing the reservoir project.
Yes.
And then on 6D, line 8, Munger moved to amend. And then, I'm sorry, I didn't get 6D. That was Munger moved to.
Same thing. We're replacing motion with moved.
Oh.
That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, just a technicality there then. So semantics.
Gotcha.
So, okay.
And then this spelling. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, simple enough. Any other additions or corrections?
Move to approve as amended.
Can we get a second?
I'll second. Chuck
Thank you,
Roby.
Chuck. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended by Deirdre and Ken Brenner, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Okay, approval, let's keep going. Sam, I hadn't seen you on here. I imagine Sam's in here somewhere.
Yep.
Sam, you're up to bat.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alden. You hearing me all right?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Well, appreciate the floor and good to see everyone. Just have a couple quick things to go through. First of all, and maybe top of mind for us is that many of you may know that Russ George stepped down as the IBC director. He's doing fine, but decided to move into an actual full retirement. We don't yet have any words on a replacement for him, and obviously those are some very big shoes to fill, but I'm sure the governor and Dan Gibbs are working on that right now, and we'll find someone to fill that role. So in the lieu of the last meeting, which was canceled due to a lot of things and a lot of conflicts, the IBCC has been engaged on the equity and proportionality issues related to the demand management feasibility investigation via a survey, and their next meeting will take place on October 21st. A couple quick stimulus and grant updates. And I guess maybe before I move into that, I'd just like to thank everybody and the local experts and everyone on the roundtable for all the great work that you've done on the BIPs and the projects list. I know it's been a big lift and a lot of work, so really appreciative. And now that those are kind of being fully thought out, it's getting to be time for implementation via the water plan grants and WSRF grant process. That note, the next grant deadline for the water plant grants is December 1st, so just make sure to get projects in before that deadline. And with the WSRF program, as many of you know, there was a $5 million stimulus infusion, which will be split between the statewide account as well as all of the Basin accounts, which will result in a $200,000 infusion into each Basin account. There is a stipulation with this, though. Those funds must be approved by the board by May 2023. So that might be just a little bit more logistics on our side is we'll try to use those stimulus funds in the Basin account before the native WSRF funds, just to meet those deadlines. I guess also coming up, we've got the July board meeting on the 21st and 22nd, which will be a hybrid meeting. And obviously demand management is going to be a large topic in that, but I'll leave that up to Director Brown if she wants to speak to that, anything going on during the board meeting. I guess I'll close out with, obviously there's dire drought conditions across the state, and I know a lot of folks on this call are feeling the pain from that. From the drought task force recommendation, there's been a drought emergency proclamation in 21 counties, and I'll surmise just a couple points on that, but feel free to go for more info to the drought page on the CWCB website. First, on June 30th, the emergency proclamation, it's a reminder that doesn't open up state emergency funds, but activating the phase 2 drought plan did open up 2 limited state funds managed by CWCB. So in the flood and drought response fund for limited emergency response, and the agricultural emergency drought response program for emergency ag water augmentation. So, however, the majority of drought response funding comes from the federal government, and I've got a bit of a list that summarizes that info that I'll pop in the chat here in just a second.
Okay.
That's all I've got to go through, but I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
Okay, I have a few questions, if I could just kind of lean off here a moment. When will we be seeing a disbursement to our Basin account?
Let me see, that's a good question. I believe it is at the end of the month or early next month. If Russ is on, he might have a
Yeah.
better answer to that, but that was my understanding.
Okay.
Sorry, Alden. And this, just to be clear, this is with regards to the 200K, the new infusion stimulus funds.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I think there's always that slip between the cup and the lip of when we actually get the funds and where it lands. But my understanding is sometimes that actual allocation can be delayed, but at least on paper, it's allocated to us. So our intent is to track these two funds separately so that you see your native, if you will, your kind of native basin funds as they are, and then the separate 200K so that we can pull down from it first, since it has this kind of more limited time to get approval on those funds. And then that way you'll kind of be able to track both in tandem. So for all intents and purposes, we'll be pulling from those funds first for anything that's getting approved by the board from July moving forward.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Second question, and I know it was posed to me earlier this evening. Has there been anything that we can do to maybe increase funding to our PEPO?
So thank you, Alden, for that question. And you're doing a great job in Kelly's absence. That was always her her thing. And I think she's bringing that to the state. You'll be happy to hear. But this is something that's weighed heavily on my mind for some time. There's not an immediate pathway to do that. But I am continuing to bring that up and look for opportunities to do it. So there's certainly, I don't want to even hint there's anything on the horizon, because there's not. But it has been on my mind, and I'm trying to be creative and bring that up at every turn of just, what are the opportunities to try to infuse more money, and quite honestly, to just lower the threshold. It's never really made sense to me for, Kelly and Patrick to have to apply for funds all the time. And it's a lot of paperwork. So just looking for opportunities if there's a way to streamline that, and it's certainly near and dear to my heart.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I see.
Well,
Ken,
may I follow up on that? Russ, thank you for your attendance and attention to that matter. But we're running an annual PEPO committee outreach on $6,500 a year. And we have got an absolute perfect storm of a drought going on. I mean, never let a perfectly good crisis go to waste. And we have everyone's attention. Now's a great time to apply those funds. I would ask that you find a way for us to have some additional, at least in the short term, some way to get those funds to these PEPO committees. We want to provide, I mean, here in the Yampa, we're looking at the over appropriation designation and a lot of other constraints that, not to mention all the drought associated issues. We have an audience. We need to get the word out. Thank you.
And I'll just respond real quickly, saying first, great to see you. I dropped you a message in the chat because I realized we haven't got to catch up in some time, but I appreciate that. Comments like this, I think, are helpful for me to be able to bring back and continue to make that case. I will say that one of the things I think there is perhaps an opportunity for, and one of the reasons I've been excited to kind of reinvigorate PEPO and really leverage state resources are, if we could get all of the PEPO folks together to agree, here's something we want to do, here's a meaningful pathway, maybe there is a way more in the near term for us to kind of identify a proof of concept of something we want to do, whatever that looks like, I don't know. But if we could generate an idea, there might be something we could do in the near term. I'll also just address that Deirdre made a comment in the chat. The 200K that's come in, that infusion, it's just like any other WSRF dollars in terms of how it can be spent. So you could certainly use that to put in another grant application to do more with PEPO, which is kind of what you guys typically do. And I know Patrick's all over that, but I also realize that's cumbersome. So points well taken, totally understand. And I'm with you, Ken.
Thank you.
Anything else for our CWCB reps?
Actually, this is Monger real quickly. So Russ or Jackie, are you guys hearing anything of feedback on the infrastructure and the federal infrastructure investment stuff that you guys, us guys might be in recipients of some of the federal monies for infrastructure and direct relationship to water, especially in the dire situations that we're at right now? Sorry, thanks.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. We are hearing, I mean, the proposed language, it's a huge bill, as you can imagine. So there are amendments that are sort of coming in on a pretty regular basis, and some of those are dealing with programs that touch us a little bit, like the recovery program and some of the backfilling through the Bureau. And then we're seeing some specific rural water allocations coming through that bill as well. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we're hearing that they're being pushed. We're seeing pretty broad support across the West for these inclusions. So I feel pretty positive that the outcome is going to include funding for that. I think we'll have a little bit more information. I'm trying to think of the best way to communicate that information through this crew. I bet we'll hear about it at Colorado Water Congress for people that are going to be attending that. But Russ, do you think, I mean, absent that, I can make a note to just sort of share some things if anything moves prior to the next Basin Roundtable meeting. But I really do think it looks positive. I think it looks more positive than anything we've seen in the last chunk of time, for sure. And happy to hear Russ's opinion on that too.
I think you said it perfectly. I mean, as with anything that's moving through the legislature, there's, we hear things and then things change rapidly, but I do have the same sense that there seems a lot of support for this at every level. And of course, we all know it's critical. I talked to some folks in the Colorado Basin, and we had a very similar discussion about just the importance of infrastructure and aging infrastructure. So we will let you know. I'm sure that I know it will be a regular report out at our board meeting, as well as Director Brown said. You'll hear about this, I'm sure, at Water Congress, and anything new, you guys will be the first to know, I'm sure. We will make sure that we get that information out as quickly as we have it. And then of course, September is probably more the opportune timeline in alliance with our board meeting, as well as the finance committee meeting. So I'm sure that over the course of the next few months, a lot more will be clear, whereas right now it's probably pretty conceptual.
Yeah, I'll just note too, as part of that massive bill, we're also seeing increased funding for DCP. I have not seen how that money will be doled out within DCP. What states are receiving what. If that kind of flew across my desk and I haven't heard about that, but I'm guessing that we'll hear about that next week at our board meeting too. Somebody will have an update on that guy.
So I guess the only reason I asked, Jackie and Russ, thank you very much for the comments. And again, it's part of our role to be advocates and to be salespeople. So, we all succeed when you guys succeed, and you guys succeed when we succeed. So we just need to figure out, everybody's got their hand out right now. So I think we need to have our hand out at the federal level as well. I know our regional airport just got a bunch of money too. It's just like, well, okay, that's great, but man, we got a water infrastructure problem out here too. So we need to make sure that we're voicing in on our local priorities to be heard in the regional, as well as the statewide, as well as the national level, to be our own advocates. Sorry.
Yeah, and I just threw in the chat box. I know I received an email yesterday that talks about the total federal appropriations. It's just not broke down to the individual states yet, and that's still preliminary. It needs to be acted upon by our feds. So that's all I really know, and I shared that in the chat box. So
yeah, and like everything, devil's in the details. What drought contingency plan means, or what rural water means, but it is defined, and I think people are still massaging. I mean, it's defined within the bill right now, but that language is getting massaged hourly and has been, you know, for the last 3 weeks. So I think we're going to keep seeing that. If have organizations that, you know, you don't feel are represented by NWRA or by Farm Bureau or Farmers Union or what have you, then I would encourage you to take a look at that and make sure that you're, you know, reaching out to your representatives if there's something glaring there that you're not feeling comfortable with.
Okay.
Hey, Al, I can give my wrap up in like 5 minutes if you just want me to finish up CWCB now.
I have no qualm with that. So let's just yield the floor to you, Jackie.
All right, that'd be great. Thanks. I just wanted to say a couple things about the last few meetings. I know I've missed a couple roundtable meetings, so just my update would be that we had a rulemaking that took place in January, which feels like forever ago. And that was on the new in-stream flow program changes, how we deal with the new statute that came through in 2020? I think, yeah, 2020 on the emergency loans and also on the 5 and 10. And as part of that, I wanted to share with you that myself and Corinne Trick, Director Trick out of the North Platte Basin, and the rest of the board really was very supportive of something that we feel is important to our rural constituents, and that is including public notice when we have in-stream flow proposals in the local papers. And so staff has committed to doing that, you know, as long as papers still continue to exist and as long as we can give some guidance as board members to how what papers are best for the different in-stream flow proposals. And I think that's a real positive for everyone. So when you see the legals come out, and I know that a lot of folks, especially ag water users, are constantly checking the legals for things. And so I think that's going to be really useful to have it in there. And I just want to thank staff for their willingness to go an extra mile with that, but also the other directors to continue pushing that with me, because I think we all believe that it's really important. And then as a side note on in-stream flows, the only one that's currently on the table is one here in Routt County in my neck of the woods in South Routt. The creek is Watson Creek. And that was scheduled to go forward through the board. Man, my months are just running together now. I think it was in January as well. And we backed off of that. The CWCB did because we really didn't hear anything from any of the folks that border that Watson Creek. And so I asked that it get removed from the agenda back in January. And I'm happy to report that Rob Veal, who's taken over Linda Bassey's role as the in-stream flow program director or chief, what would it be, Russ? I'm sorry, it's not chief, deputy. Help me here.
Rob is section chief.
Section chief, thank you. He came out last Friday and met with a bunch of folks on Watson Creek and had a really productive meeting just about in-stream flows in general and the mechanics of Watson Creek and, you know, dry year, wet year, et cetera. And again, really grateful that staff was able to make that happen. Really excited that the local folks took advantage of that. So I want to just make sure that, you know, and for folks like Casey, who, you know, touch ag users quite often in your roles as with the conservation district, that is something that's available to you. And if you see an in-stream flow that comes through, you're not comfortable with it, it's proposed, or you want to know more about it, or you think that there's value for having staff come out and take a field visit, just reach out to me and I'll work with staff to make sure that we make that happen. And in this past case, we have BLM and was out, and the water commissioner. And so I think, I just want to make sure everybody knows that that's available. And now that we're in some sort of post-COVID experience, that's even more available than it has been. Two last things. We've changed the way we approve grants a little bit at CWCB. And so we're doing a lot of consent agenda grant items for things that fall below our thresholds, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But in next week's consent agenda, 2 of the projects that you all wrote letters of support for the City of Craig and Oak Creek Sheriff Dam rehabilitation, those are both on the consent agenda for next week. So hopefully those go through and those projects can get off the ground ASAP. Last item would be demand management. And, obviously everybody's seeing how frequently the drought is coming up right now. Things are real bad, especially in the hydropower world, that for folks that are like Tri-State that use federal hydropower, it's getting pretty untenable. But of course, we're hearing that there's going to be some releases scheduled out of Flaming Gorge to boost the inflows into Lake Powell to try to do some balancing. So we've really seen this drop, and we see that there is a huge possibility that we're going to hit our triggers as near as fall of 2022, and so in Powell, and Meade's already in a bad position. So all that is to say that this discussion of demand management and the rest of the Upper Basin's DCP reservoir management is certainly coming on our heels. With that said, demand management, we do have an update coming up next week at our meeting, but more importantly, I think we have a workshop planned on August 18th in the afternoon from 1 to 5. And I'd encourage you, if you're able, to join that virtually. I think it's a virtual meeting. I don't think it's in person at all. But I think it will really, as I've shared with a couple different boards, and the last few minutes that I'll take up here is just that CWCB, through the demand management funding allocation for us to investigate this, we had funding for the consultants to reach out individually to the board members and ask, what our big concerns are and how we can frame the discussion as we get closer to the feasibility recommendation, whether or not we're going to go forward with that. And we each took at least an hour with these consultants and really shared our concerns that we're hearing from our basins, concerns that we have personally or professionally. And so I think that workshop is going to be a heavy hitter. We're going to have a lot of really good questions to tackle, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I just, want you to know how hard we're all working behind the scenes, and, just trying to find that middle ground as we go forward. And then as a reminder, we'll have this feasibility investigation decision. And if it goes forward, we will also then start to talk about whether or not we believe demand management is advisable. So those are 2 different questions. I look at the feasibility as, is it technically possible? And the advisability will really include the bigger picture of the interim negotiations and the interim guideline negotiations, and just this larger component of aeridification in the Colorado River Basin in general. So I just wanted to share that with you as an update, and thanks for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions if we have time.
Here I am having a conversation with myself on mute. Anybody have any feedback or questions to talk with Jackie about? Thank you. Jackie, that was a really good report. I'm glad that they found some mechanisms for the in-stream flow program. because I know in some areas that's something of concern to some folks. So I appreciate you sharing that as part for our group. So
yeah, and in fact, Al, your letter that came out of Rio Blanco, man, maybe 2+ years ago, was one of the examples that I used of why it's so important. Your board wrote a letter about wishing to see that be in the legal section, and certainly not the first, nor would it have been the last letter that we would have heard from the rural community. So thanks for your diligence on that too.
Well, thanks for the consideration. It's appreciated in knowing that these letters they are being read, and that they're being considered. So thank you very much for that. So good. Okay, next item on the agenda, we've got any public input. I haven't received an email or anything. Megan, have you received anything from anybody, or Patrick?
No, I have not.
No.
Okay.
Al, this is T. Wright.
Yes, sir.
A question, I think, for Jackie, or use Jackie as a placeholder, and that has in regards to do with these releases out of Flaming Gorge, and I can talk about that a little bit later. But Jackie, we were somewhat surprised over here on this call today, and who on the Colorado side with the demand management who in Colorado ought to be kind of talking with us locals as they talk about the need for these releases out of both Flaming Gorge and Blue Mesa.
Do you want to elaborate on that, T. Wright? Were you surprised at who was there, or you are curious as to who will be representing you? I'm sorry, I was at the dentist during that phone call today, so I wasn't able to attend it.
Okay, so they Bureau Rec hurriedly pulled a call together today to tell us about releases that they're going to start tomorrow, and they told us that this whole thing has come together over about 10 days worth of time in seeing the need to make these releases. And back in April, when we had asked about this from the Flaming Gorge Work Group side, Bureau Rec had been pretty standoffish in telling us that there were state groups that were people that were talking about this drought contingency planning and any releases out of the reservoirs, and we ought to be talking with them. And then it was kind of interesting why all of a sudden we got involved in the conversation. And we appreciate being involved in the conversation, but it wasn't lost on me that we in the Green in particular haven't heard anything or haven't been contacted by anybody in the state who was thinking about supporting releases out of Flaming Gorge to ask if we had any issues or concerns. And so for you and Hunter and others who walk in those circles, I guess I'd ask you to help the state of Colorado, whoever's talking about these things, not forget that we're out here and that they ought to be talking to us.
And T-Ray, when you say us, would that be like members of the Flaming Gorge Work Group, or do you have, should we work through you?
That's one of the places. I mean, this roundtable is another place. Us as individual users up and down the system, so that they have our, we know that they've got our interests at heart and they know what our interests are.
Okay, point taken. I will pass that along to Greg when I talk to him, who works in the interstate section, and I'll connect you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks, T. Wright.
Anything else there? Okay. Public comment. I know T. Wright probably he chimed in a little late for for Jackie. That's not a big deal. So, any public comment out there from anybody online that's with us as a guest? Hearing none, let's move forward. Lisa Brown with Wilson. Oh, sorry.
So Al, this is Doug Munger. I apologize. I was waiting to see if we had any public. We really don't have a place on the agenda for board member or board comments and the rest. So I just wanted to let everybody know that both Callie Hendrickson and I were invited to the North Route Roundtable meeting for a presentation on our integrated water management plans and the stream management plans and you know, so whatever. So I just wanted to let everybody know that both Callie and I attended virtually those meetings, and just, you know, I think anyhow, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
No worries. That might be something we should include in our agenda anyway, because it's on my agendas for my board and the River District and all over the place. So Doug, that's probably a good suggestion to have. So we'll see if we can actually work that in. So anything else? All right, Lisa, here we go. We've got a BIP update. We're kind of getting ready to wrap that thing up here. I know there's been an awful lot of effort put into there. So Lisa's got a presentation tonight. We're going to have about a 30-minute presentation, and then we're going to open it up to a Q&A discussion here for our roundtable. So Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me back. Can you guys see my screen? Hopefully a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Let's get started then. Okay, so the agenda for our presentation tonight is this is the final BIP update from me. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to the BIP committee for helping us get this over the finish line. And well, I think we've got a really nice product for you guys, and really pleased to be here tonight and presenting on what we have accomplished. So tonight we're going to go over just a quick reminder of the BIP process, then a progress report since my last update to the Basin Roundtable back in March. And then I'm going to walk through some highlights from the BIP report that we've put together and the IPMP list. And then we'll talk about next steps. And I think Russ Sands is on the line as well to help with any additional questions that might come up about next steps. And hopefully we'll have some time for discussion as well. So I got my fireworks to say thank you, BIP committee. Okay, so just a real quick reminder. I think everybody's seen this slide a couple of times now, but in 2015, the original BIP was published, and then that was included in the first Colorado Water Plan, along with the BIP updates from all of the other basin roundtables from across the state of Colorado. The state's planning process is cyclical, so we start with the technical update that provides the modeling information to show water supplies, demands, and future water needs or shortages. And for this particular update, then they included the 5 potential future planning scenarios. And then that kind of provides the basis for the Basin implementation plan. So now that we have this technical information about where the demands and supplies are, what are we going to do to help close those gaps? So the Basin implementation plan is to figure out what the tech update means for our basin, write that down in the BIP. And a big piece of that is also tracking, projects that stakeholders are proposing through kind of the IPMP list. So the big effort was led by the BIP committee, and your local expert team was the consulting team working with the BIP committee to get this off the ground. So that would be myself. I'm Lisa Brown with Wilson Water Group. And then I was joined by Dan Birch and Brian Golton from CBI. So your dynamic trio here of getting all this good stuff done. All right, so our major deliverables for the project was the Identified Projects and Processes IPMP list or database. So these are infrastructure projects, studies, methods that would be implemented in the future to address the water supply gap. And the goal for this is that it's going to be transformed from sort of a static table that appears in the BIP to a living online database. So that is still kind of in the future, but I'm going to put a check mark next to that because we have done our part to update that list for inclusion in the database. And then the other major deliverable was the updated BIP report. So this is basically a compilation of what the basin has accomplished since the 2015 BIP, and then what is next on our radar. And I'm also going to put a check mark next to that because we have gotten that delivered as well. So that kind of was the big progress update. So, but just to go into a couple of the nitty-gritty details, we had the draft BIP report was provided to the BIP committee. The BIP committee did a very comprehensive and thorough review. I got comments back from a large number of committee members, and I really think that the comments were substantive and very helpful in kind of taking the BIP to the next level. So your committee members did an amazing job with getting this product to be the highest standard possible, and really, I think, represents both the accomplishments that the basin has moved forward on their basin goals since 2015, and then also has really sort of laid out a path for the Basin Roundtable, for the basin as a whole, for the next foreseeable future here. So another thank you to the BIP committee for all of your guys' attention and time on this. So once we got the comments back, the local expert team incorporated those comments, and then we have delivered the report to Brown and Caldwell. So Brown and Caldwell is the general contractor on the project, and they are responsible for making sure everything is beautiful when it gets published. So that's kind of the next step of it, is to, you know, as an engineer, I have done my best to format the report in a comprehensible, logical manner. And then they've got a great team over at Brown and Caldwell that are kind of going to gussy things up so that it looks visually appealing as well. And do you know, that final grammar edit. Although I would say that I think that the committee members hopefully caught most of my grammar faux pas, so I think we're in pretty good shape. And then the other thing was the IPMP list got finalized. We had a couple of late-breaking IPMPs that got added to the list. And then just another big thank you to all of the project proponents for providing your project's details to make sure we had everything, crossed all our T's, dotted all our I's, and got everything buttoned up for that deliverable there. So that has also been submitted. Okay, so I guess before we jump into highlights, Al, should I hold questions till the end, or should we take questions as we go? What's easier with the Zoom call? Maybe wait till the end?
I think it's best to wait it till the end. And
Okay.
if they do have a question that's pressing, maybe put it in the chat box so it doesn't slip anybody's mind, and then we can catch up to it in the end there.
Okay, that sounds great. I will charge forward then. Okay, so the BIP update, I just wanted to, it came in, it's a hefty lift here. So it weighs in at about 103 pages right now, plus the appendices. So that's definitely a door stopper. So I just wanted to kind of hit on some of the highlights, because me reading it out loud to everybody is definitely not going to be the best use of our time tonight. So just wanted to walk through the outline real quick, and then I'm going to talk about some selected sections and some highlights from the highlight reel, basically. So we started off just with our introduction and our basin overview, our basin challenges, the goals, objectives, and achievements. That was definitely a meaty section there. The supply, demand, and potential water needs, which is sort of a recap of the technical update, the strategies that the basin might want to consider, future basin projects, which is that IPMP list. And then we have a whole chapter dedicated to public education, participation, and outreach strategies. So the PEPO committee definitely stepped up to the plate and really delivered on that. And then we've got some conclusions. So overall, I think we've got a pretty comprehensive look both back and forward, which I think was a kind of a unique challenge for this particular round. So I just kind of wanted to hit on some of the highlights from some of these individual sections. So I'm going to start with the basin challenges. And really this, got to hand it back to the BIP committee members as well. Folks kind of took different sections that were near and dear to their hearts and to their area of expertise, and helped draft these different pages here. So we've got a nice write-up on the water energy nexus, which impacts to the Yampa Basin with the coal-fired power plant, planned closures, the White River Basin, the question of will they, won't they with oil shale, The Colorado River Compact, got a nice write-up on that and the potential impacts to the basin under our basin challenges. Climate change, very high level, but definitely a hard-hitting section there, and some of the implications for forest health, which then transitions nicely into the water quality section. And then the recovery of the endangered species as well. And, you know, really just wanted to emphasize how the BIP committee, I thought, did a wonderful job leading the conversations about the challenges facing the basin and how these are then going to motivate the projects and the policies that stakeholders in the basin are going to be pursuing in kind of the near-term future. So these are both long-term challenges with some near-term actions. Okay. The next section that we had was about the goals, objectives, and achievements. And it got a little bit of a mouthful for the title there. But basically, I wanted to kind of hit on some of the key decisions that the BIP committee made. And the first one, I think, almost goes without saying, but it was to continue to support the 8 basin goals that were developed in the 2015 BIP. And I went ahead and put them on the slide here as well for everybody, just to jog your memory. And then just a bit about the objectives. So underneath each of the 8 basin goals, we in the 2015 BIP, there were a list of objectives. And, you know, the goals, I think, are appropriately sort of lofty and visionary. And then the objectives get down to the nitty gritty of what are we actually going to do to move these goals forward? How are we going to actually decide if we've accomplished the goal or not? So the objectives really kind of give you something to get started on. That's a much more actionable and specific item. So we kind of refined some of the objectives from 2015, sort of as conditions have changed and maybe we're moving in a slightly different direction. But I think overall, the objectives from the 2015 BIP, it was primarily like wordsmithing and cleaning up on those. And then we also added some new objectives, mostly in the face of additional challenges that have arisen since 2015. And in some cases, this was a little bit of a looking back to see where we're going kind of thing. So kind of looking at the grants that the BRT has funded in the past, since 2015 to present, to sort of help make sure that the things that we're putting our money toward, we're also appropriately documenting in the BIP as a priority for the basin as well. And then this was probably the most fun. I thought this was the most fun part of updating the BIP, was the highlighting the BRT and stakeholder progress toward achieving the 8 basin goals. So we really got to kind of circle back to the folks that had gotten grant money and also some of the stakeholders that had advanced projects, even without Basin Roundtable funding or with Basin Roundtable funding as well, and really got to catalog those and document those. So that was definitely kind of an eye-opener, as well as in terms of like how much has been done across the basin since 2015. Okay, so in the interest of time, I have just picked one of the goals to do just a brief high-level example of kind of the treatment that all of the goals got in the BIP. So the goal that I picked was restore, maintain, and modernize water storage and distribution infrastructure. And the reason I picked this one was because it had some of the most action under it. So we had a lot of achievements, and then we also had quite a few sort of like near-term focus areas that we wanted to advance on this goal. So underneath the objectives, we added some additional near-term focus areas. So how exactly are we going to achieve this goal? So we kind of put some more concrete, more meat on the bones there. And then we added 2 new objectives to address some new challenges that have arisen. And those are support avenues to share best management practices for municipal systems to address leak detection, tank inspections, et cetera. And I think that was kind of a theme that came up a couple of times in the BIP committee, was about, you know, the Basin Roundtable can be a really excellent forum for bringing together folks that perhaps wouldn't normally have the opportunity or the forum to talk to each other. So this could be a way to kind of help our neighbors out in the basin with best practices. So kind of in that same vein, create demonstration projects to use as educational tools for best management practices. So again, just saying like, hey, the Basin Roundtable has got folks from across the basin, and we can really start tapping into those networks to get the word out about different avenues at the Basin Roundtable, and help keep each other informed as to what we're all doing. There was 10 different achievements that then got highlighted under this goal, and I've just listed their lead title. There's definitely, and then the green highlighting here indicates the ones that have received BRT funding. So, you know, there definitely are some other projects out there that are moving forward just based on the stakeholder interests. And then there's a lot of projects that the BRT has helped move forward through that BRT funding. So I thought this was a pretty exciting list, just to see all of the places that infrastructure is being restored, maintained, and modernized. So I just wanted to give kind of a quick high-level roundup of this section. So all 8 of the Basin goals had multiple achievements that we were listing underneath them in terms of things that the BRT and stakeholders had undertaken since 2015. So none of the Basin goals have been left by the wayside. You guys are making progress on all of them. We refined those objectives from 2015, developed some new objectives that placed an emphasis on the types of studies or projects where the BRT can have the most impact. So really trying to get our arms around where the BRT fits into this big picture here. And one of the things that I thought was the most interesting about writing this section was really kind of this exercise in looking back at what we had accomplished to help determine where we are headed next as the BRT. One thing that I did want to throw out to the group so that we don't lose this idea in the future was perhaps having PEPO, either the committee or the public education participation outreach, listed as a top level goal. For this BIP update, the committee decided instead of reopening the goals and trying to work PEPO in for this round, instead we decided to dedicate an entire chapter in the BIP update to PEPO instead. So that was, I think, gave PEPO even more pages than they would have gotten otherwise. The other piece that we added for this section is called ongoing initiatives. And so we really wanted to highlight some of the things that the Basin Roundtable is involved in right now. So perhaps their work isn't quite completed, and we're anticipating that there will be lots of good stuff coming out of them in the near future. So this was very much like a stay tuned part of the report. So the 4 sections that we had for our ongoing initiatives was on the Yampa River IWMP, the White River IWI, the Grants Committee, and then the Big River Committee as well. All right, I'm just going to grab a quick sip of water. The next section in the BIP report is on the supplies, demands, and potential water needs. So this is really kind of the start of maybe the more technical section of the BIP, because we are really talking about what does the technical update mean for the Yampa-White-Green. And I just wanted to pull together some of the high level drivers that are captured by the technical update model that really sets the stage for how water demands and then the supplies and future needs are considered. So the first one is agriculture. So as I'm showing on the map here, we've got the locations of irrigated acreage. Orange is flood, green is sprinkler, and then we've got the blue triangles are showing the reservoirs that are represented in the state mod model. So that's kind of a brief overview of the agricultural use in the basin. And I did throw on the crop types. So the predominant crop in both the Yampa and the White is pasture grass. And then we've also got alfalfa as kind of our coming in second there. And I thought that was just really interesting that it's almost equal shares of the pie between the Yampa and the White for how much acreage is dedicated to pasture grass and how much is alfalfa. All right, so our next big category is the municipal and industrial users. So we've kind of got a map here that is showing where we are representing our major municipal and industrial users in the model. So we've got our large municipalities: Steamboat, City of Craig, Meeker, Rangeley, and then our big industrial, self-supplied industrial users. So the Steamboat Resort Snowmaking, Hayden Station, Craig Station, Mayville Pipeline, and then the California Cove Pipeline in the White River as well. Not represented on the map, we are also including the municipal and domestic demands for smaller domestic providers, sort of in aggregate in the model. So those users aren't forgotten about, but they don't show up on the map in quite the same way. And then the last category is for our environmental and recreational needs. And I actually created two maps for this one. So this is the map showing the river broken out by the non-consumptive needs attributes. So this is building off of the work that the Basin Roundtable has previously published. And I believe there might be some minor updates or tweaks coming to this map based on some more recent feedback from stakeholders, but this is the current official version. So there are reaches that have environmental and recreational attributes. We talked about in-stream flows a little bit earlier in the meeting, so I did want to also make sure that we emphasize those, that in-stream flows are definitely taken account for in the model. And this is a little bit of getting into the nitty-gritty, but the hot pink reaches are the ones that are represented explicitly in the model. And then the green reaches are not necessarily represented explicitly in the model, mostly because these tributaries are not explicitly represented as well. But yep, everywhere that there's the hot pink, that stretch of the river is specifically in the model. And the goal of showing that is to kind of highlight there, and because those are explicitly in the model, then we can quantify the water supply compared to the in-stream flow demands for those reaches. All right, so then those are kind of the main drivers for where water is going in terms of the demands across the basin. And for the technical update, we also had the 5 planning scenarios. So the CWCB took the tact of moving forward with scenario planning for this particular version of the technical update. And the idea is to consider a broad range of plausible futures. So we're not saying that one future is definitely going to happen and another future is not going to happen. We're trying to consider a range of possible conditions. And the objective for that is to then consider solutions that work well under multiple potential futures, and to find out if there's a solution that is working well for one potential set of conditions, but perhaps not for another potential set of conditions. Trying to find those options that are low to no regrets. So just a brief walkthrough of the 5 planning scenarios. I'm sure we've all heard multiple versions of this before, but the main drivers are the climate conditions. So business as usual and weak economy assume that historical climate conditions will continue into the future. The cooperative growth assumes an incremental increase in temperature. And then under adaptive innovation and hot growth, we assume the largest increase or a large increase in temperatures and a decrease in precipitation. And then we also consider a range of how agricultural needs are going to respond or change in the future, how much population growth there's going to be, how much industrial demands there are going to be. And then the social values is kind of talking about what are the demands for non-consumptive needs for environmental and recreational needs. So these all kind of vary across the different scenarios. And what we're kind of keying off of is, well, how do our different drivers in the basin respond to the different planning scenarios? So I've selected a handful of the results, and there are definitely plenty more details in the report. But I did kind of I liked this result for agriculture because what it really is showing is that the main driver for the shortages, this is the percent gap. So these are shortages experienced by agricultural users in the Yampa Basin. the average annual percent short for the modeled period, which is 1975 through 2013. And what this graph is really showing is that hydrology is going to be the primary driver for shortages to agricultural users. So our baseline business as usual in the economy, which all assumed historical conditions, those lines all basically trend together. They fall right on top of each other. The cooperative growth included like the first step of climate change, so that kind of falls in the middle. And then the adaptive innovation and hot growth assumed the hot and dry climate conditions. So there are some differences between the adaptive innovation and the hot growth for agriculture. We can see that some of the adaptive innovations that agriculture is assumed to deploy under that scenario helps to reduce the shortages. But overall, the adaptive innovation and hot growth are more similar to each other than they are to the other scenarios, indicating that the climate conditions are the primary driver. To switch things up for our municipal and industrial users, I selected the results for the White Basin. And we're just looking at the average annual demand, average annual gap, the change from the baseline, and then our average annual percent gap. And this kind of just illustrates how the municipal and industrial demands are varied across the different scenarios. So we can see, our baseline, we're sitting at about 7,000 acre feet of annual average demand for municipal and industrial users. That goes up a little bit, that goes up in business as usual, essentially holds steady in weak economy, kind of somewhere in the middle for cooperative growth and adaptive innovation. And then for hot growth, we see this number just really go through the roof. And the hot growth scenario assumed a large increase in energy development in the White Basin. So that's where we see kind of this much larger number compared to the other scenarios. And then probably drawing your attention to the average annual percent gap. So basically, how well are the water supplies able to hold up under the different conditions? So that's where we're starting to see, well, we're doing, if the basin grows and demands increase as the business as usual scenario assumed, we would definitely see some shortages, mostly to those industrial uses related to energy development. We've got a little bit of shortage creeping in, mostly for a combination of municipal and industrial users under sort of the moderate growth levels. And then substantial shortages, especially under that hot growth scenario, which assumed large increases to the energy development. So this kind of hopefully illustrates how the scenario planning can be used to start helping people think about different conditions in the future and kind of where you want to strategically position yourself in terms of planning. For the environmental and recreational attributes, again, just selected one result. There are many more than this, but I'm picking on the steamboat RISD, and kind of the metric that we were using here was the RISD has stream flow targets. The model is on a monthly time step, so we're definitely taking a high level approach, but we're looking at the percent of months that the stream flow target is met. And those months would be April, May, June, July, and August when these RISD has stream flow targets. So we're kind of seeing how things sort of bounce around, under baseline conditions. We're meeting those July targets about 50% of the time. But then when we get down to our hot growth scenario, we're definitely seeing that things are drying up and those July targets are rarely met. So that is kind of one of the perhaps a motivating graphic there to say, well, we want to try and do something to address conditions under that adaptive innovation and hot growth scenario for the RISD. So then the next section in the BIP update was basically motivated by saying like, okay, where are we seeing our gaps in the future? And what are some potential strategies the Basin Roundtable might want to explore to try and help alleviate those gaps? And I just want to, we've kind of done some scenario modeling before, but basically we selected 3 alternative management options to explore in the model. So these are asking kind of the what if questions of the model to help us understand what could happen if we start tweaking the management levers. And the goal of these alternative management options was to help understand the trade-offs. What are the benefits and what are the risks if we were to change the way that we do something in the basin? And I just want to be very clear that all of the language in the BIP as well is caveated with this is intended to be an exploratory exercise. We're not endorsing one strategy or another or any component of any of the strategies, just trying to understand, you know, these are the options that we have at hand. What is that going to do if we choose to try and pursue some of these? Trying to understand if they are worth looking further into. Okay, so our 3 alternative management strategies. The first one is agricultural efficiency. So the assumption was, what if we converted 20% of the flood irrigated acres to sprinkler irrigation basin-wide? And now as a modeler, that is a very easy thing for me to do, to just say, well, whatever the acreage is under each individual ditch, just convert 20% of it to sprinkler irrigation. Now, I understand that it's absolutely not how this would happen in real life, in practice on the ground. There would be a lot of local considerations as to whether it made sense for any particular parcel or field to be converted from flood to sprinkler irrigation. But for the purposes of the model, this was kind of the easiest way to then distribute those impacts across the basin. Currently, there's about 8% of the acres are sprinkler irrigated. So what if we increase that total to about 26% of the total basin being irrigated by sprinklers? And then once we've gotten the increased efficiency in terms of delivering to the crops, then we can decrease the headgate demand, or the amount of water that we need to divert from the river, in order to still meet that same crop irrigation requirement. All right, I have some animation on this slide, so we'll see if it works. So I just wanted to touch on some of my high-level results. So there was actually a slight increase in agricultural gaps. There was a very minor change to our M&I, and then we saw, in terms of the ENR, then we saw an increase in stream flow during the spring, but then a decrease in stream flow during the late irrigation season, the fall and the winter. And I have got a graph of the White River near Watson. So this is my monthly stream flow, and we can see the purple line, which is my efficiency run, is slightly higher than the other guys during those peak runoff periods. But then we see the purple line is a little bit lower during the low period, and I've got a zoomed in graph here. So again, looking at that purple line compared to the other ones. And hopefully, yes. So the red circles are showing that period where we see the stream flow is a little bit lower due to the decrease in return flows. And then this is an example of the stream. This is highlighting areas where the stream flow is a little bit higher, because we don't have to divert as much water when there's a lot of water available in order to meet that same crop irrigation requirement. Okay, so I'm looking at my time, and I think I have to hurry up, you guys. Our second alternative management option was looking at new releases from existing reservoirs. So this was primarily a Yampa focused alternative, with looking at new releases from the Steamboat Lake for the city of Steamboat, future Elk River diversion, Elkhead Reservoir, and Stagecoach Reservoir. And just wanted to say the high level results are that, hey, if you release additional reservoir water to some users, those gaps can be improved. There are still water users that do have gaps, especially water users that are not easily served by reservoirs. I'm looking at you, Little Snake River. And then the Elkhead Reservoir levels fluctuate more frequently and to lower levels than under current management. So this is definitely something that we would want to consider. What are the values of having Elkhead Reservoir be more full as opposed to having that storage released to the river. Option number 3 was looking at additional storage. So for the Yampa, we continued on with our number 2, and then in addition to that, added on rehabilitating Stillwater Reservoir and enlarging Elkhead Reservoir by 4,300 acre feet. For the White River Basin, we enlarged Lake Avery by 2,644 acre feet, and then we assumed an off-channel version of Wolf Creek Reservoir that would have about 7,000 acre feet available for municipal and augmentation needs. And the take-home messages are that additional storage can help improve the gaps, but under the hot and dry climate conditions, they are not fully addressed in the Yampa. And then for the white, if future industrial gaps are improved, but if oil shale really ramps up like we saw in that hot growth option, then the demand will outstrip supplies. Okay, future projects list. We spent quite a bit of time doing stakeholder outreach and outreach to folks both on the BRT and getting you to tap your friends and neighbors. So thank you guys for responding to that. Just wanted to kind of hit the highlights that these were all voluntarily put forth by project proponents. Although sometimes it felt like we were pulling teeth, everybody did actually volunteer to have their project put on the list. All of the projects that are on the list are there because they align with the Basin goals. One note is that these are not necessarily endorsed by the BRT. The point of the point of the future project list is to help the BRT keep track of kind of what the stakeholders around the basin are proposing. And from a CWCB perspective, the future project list is to help identify funding needs. So projects are not required to be on the list to get BRT or CWCB funding. Those decisions, the funding decisions, are based strictly on the grant applications. But this is kind of just to keep a finger on the pulse and definitely help track projects as they move through their process. I did put this slide together just to give a high-level overview of the IPMPs that are on the list. We added 52 projects to the list, which brought our total up to 90. 53 of those projects have cost estimates for a grand total of, yes, $665 million to implement all of the projects that have cost estimates. And as this says, 53 projects have cost estimates at a total of 90. So we're missing, this could be a pretty serious underestimate. I did want to just highlight the projects by status. We kind of broke things out into concept, which is sort of a really high level, not a lot of detail. Planned, where the project proponent is moving through the process, perhaps has a funding source lined up or identified, is perhaps getting started with the permitting process, kind of depending on what type of projects it's looking at. And then implementing means currently ongoing projects. So this is kind of a really nice split between those three categories to say, like, we've got projects that are both being thought of that are kind of, and then we've got projects that are in the pipeline, and then we've got projects that are getting implemented on the ground right now. Broke projects out by category. I think in the interest of time, I'll just highlight that about a third of the projects are related to watershed health, and then the other projects kind of fall out into several different categories. But yeah, we've got a broad array of projects that the stakeholders are pursuing across the basin. And I just wanted to highlight that about 45 of our projects had a clear multi-benefit, multi-use aspect to them. I think you probably could argue that more of them did, but I was the one that got to draw the line in the sand. And I think there's 45 that have a very distinct multi-benefit aspect to them. So this is definitely an ethos that's being embraced. And then we had our entire chapter on the public education, participation, and outreach. And I just wanted to thank the PEPO committee again for providing us with that language and getting I think, a really nice write-up of those activities. So both an overview, the education action plan, and then the achievements since 2015. All right, I've gone a little over, but next steps. So I've been showing you guys this kind of like table of the agenda. So here we are, June/July, and we have accomplished our delivery to the general contractor, which is fantastic. So coming up next is going to be the BRT fine-tune review, and then next is public comment, and then finally publishing. And both of these reviews, the BRT review and then the public comment period, are going to be available through the engage.cwcb website. So we will have PDFs of the reports published, and then it'll kind of be like everybody can see all of the comments that other folks have made. So hopefully you don't have to make duplicate comments as you go along, or perhaps someone's comment will spark a new comment. And then I did just want to mention, in addition, so that's kind of the big deliverable on my end was the volume 2 and the IPMP list. And then the kind of the next product that's being developed right now is the general contractor is summarizing every single basin's volume 2 into a volume 1, which is a streamlined, shorter document that has a standard format to help increase readability across the 9 basin roundtables. And so in addition to volume 2 being available during those review periods, then the Yampa-White-Green's volume 1 will also be available. And what we're really looking for at that point is kind of that final polish, any fine tunes that we need from you guys on those reviews. And the other update is that CWCB is currently working on developing that online database to host the IPMP list in the future. So from your local expert team, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. It really has been a pleasure working on this project with you. It's been a whirlwind, but we have gotten it across the finish line. So with that, I will take any questions or any discussion.
Let's open it up.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Lisa, should we have included a scenario that was for a extended historic drought?
You know, that's a good question, Ken. When we did the phase 3 BIP modeling effort, we did look back to see if there were how the hot and dry climate change hydrology compared to the paleohydrology sequence for the Yampa Basin. And that, I think the extended drought is probably the only piece that was missing. There was definitely years that had flows. The hot and dry climate change has that annual flow volume that is just as low, just as dire as the conditions that we're seeing in the paleohydrology. But that extended drought is something that is not exactly replicated in the hot and dry conditions. So that is still a challenge, perhaps, that is not fully developed in the conditions that we're looking at. But I think the goal of the 5 planning scenarios was to sort of consider a range of conditions. So I think the hot and dry scenario kind of gets us, I would say, close enough to seeing incredibly dire conditions in the river. In terms of low flows and high demands. That's kind of the perfect storm for what's the basin going to do that does produce significant gaps. So I think it is something that is a serious enough challenge for the basin in terms of trying to address.
So I'd like to follow up on Ken's question. This is Deirdre, which I think is an excellent one, because I don't know that all of us would agree, but I think many of us would agree that the basin and the state and the West is on the heels of a tremendous growing crisis. So it's hard to minimize the impact that the climate change is going to have. And I haven't seen the final draft or the near final draft. The last one I saw was from May, and it was not covered as much as I personally would have liked to have seen it. But here are my concerns. There is a professor at Mesa University. His name is Nathan Perry. He's been hired by Rio Blanco County and Moffett. And he has very clearly outlined prediction for the future, which is that both Moffett and Rio Blanco are predicted to be the 2 counties in the state that are projected to lose some significant level of population because of the declining oil and gas markets. Routt is one of the 3 counties that is predicted to grow. So with that, I didn't see that in the report. I am concerned, and I've expressed it before, that the 5 models, and I understand we're limited by the state, but the 5 models that the state has given us to work with, I don't think any of them are realistic. So to me, it's frustrating to see an over 100-page report that, and I'm not faulting you as the consultants, but I think we have to be realistic. We have to listen to the scientists. We have to follow the projections of growing higher temperatures and growing drought. And so as we put together a list of nearly 100, and I actually thought it was 125 projects on the IPP, we have a number that have no champion. We have a number that have been discontinued. And I think we have a number, it concerns me that we have some projects that this, we put them forward on our list. It makes it look like we are supporting them. I am deeply concerned with particularly the storage, new storage. It's no secret that I personally have opposed the Wolf Creek. But I think that the bigger issue is we're in a changing world, and it's changing faster than any of us anticipated or want to change. So we have to look at the need for storage. Yes, we need storage. There's no question about that. But it has to be smart storage. We know that surface storage has huge amounts of evaporative loss that we can't afford as a community across the West. So we need to be looking at underground storage. And I am really concerned that we've spent a lot of money and time and excellent consultants. I'm not faulting the consultants, but we're working with 5 models that are not realistic. We're not listening to the science and to the endless presentations that we've all sat through, where we see every year it getting hotter and drier. We have to look at sensible solutions. We have to research underground storage, filtration galleries, things that make sense in this world. So we're not wasting these precious amounts of water that we're lucky enough to live at the headwaters of. So thanks for listening to me, but these are my concerns. And I really, personally, I don't know if Alden was planning on putting this up for approval tonight. I want to read the entire report, but I am deeply, deeply concerned that when we put an IPP list together of all these projects that we have not as a group discussed, it appears that we are supporting these. And I think that there are a number of projects on here that all of us, that bear really good discussion and may not deserve our support as a group. Thank you.
Can I speak to that? I'm sorry. This is Jackie. Al, when you have a minute.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Jackie.
I know that I've said this at our meetings before, but I just very much feel strongly that we can't, as a roundtable, be in charge of gatekeeping projects that happen in our basins. That's not why we were convened. We need to make sure that we allow people to research and put forward their projects and let the federal and state processes take their role in planning and implementation of those projects. We are in charge of whether or not we want to recommend those projects to the CWCB, but I don't want to confuse our role within the agency or as fellow water users in our own basin. This is a democracy, and we're allowed to put forward projects that may be a little bit, we're not all going to love each other's projects, but that's part of how you get the best project and how you move forward. So I really think that we need to recall that role that we serve in. And Deirdre, while I appreciate what you're saying, I don't think that's our role. And we're not approving these projects so that they can be implemented. We're holding space for them to be considered within the realm of what types of projects and what projects could potentially move forward if they end up to be projects that are able to be permitted and able to jump through the 7 million hoops that every project has to jump through. So I respectfully disagree with what you're saying, and I respect you very much, and I think you're super intelligent, and I really appreciate you bringing it to the table, but I just don't think that's our role.
Thank you.
Alden, could I jump in as well?
Yeah, Russ.
Look, I think great comments all around. So thank you for the input. I did want to just pause and kind of make the point and remind, and maybe to set the tone for the future too, that these 5 scenarios that we have were originally created in conjunction with roundtables and the IBCC, and were taken from I think there were 38 initial portfolios of what the future might look like. And it took several years for IBCC to ultimately whittle those down to the 5. And those are the 5 that you see in the water plan. The challenge in front of us in the technical update, and that's carried through into the BIP and the next water plan, is turning those narratives to numbers. And I would argue we are following the best science. It's hard to know. I mean, we're living in unprecedented times. If you said, are we going to have the 3 biggest fires this last year? I don't think anybody would have ever said yes to that. You know, the science is telling us that droughts are getting closer together, but we are very much incorporating and doubling down on the inclusion of good climate data, the same climate data that's the underlying data used by other state scientists and international scientists that are telling us, and in that upper scenario, 4.8 degree Fahrenheit change by 2050. And I think, as you pointed out, that's not going to be evenly spread, and that's, we're seeing that play out this year in terms of heat and precipitation patterns as well. So I would, respectfully say that we have, I think, done a lot of work collectively to try to arrive at how we can best utilize the science we have. And the task in front of us, if anything, is how do we continue to refine that? Everything we do is iterative, and I would expect that, part of the effort behind scenario planning is that you reevaluate and you say, well, what track are we on now? And do we need different scenarios? Should we reevaluate that? So I very much imagine that an action in the water plan would include some variation on that of how do we look at that again, and look at, do we need new scenarios the next time we do this? And maybe, to your point, there's one with a longer drought. Maybe it's the combination of drought and a really weak economy, as we've seen over this last couple of years. That is kind of captured in the range of data, perhaps, but maybe not cobbled together the same way. So I just wanted to make that point. And again, as Director Brown said, I completely respect all the opinions being voiced, but I do think a lot of good work has gone into this.
And there's a public comment period that's coming up yet as well. So that might be a more of appropriate place for that public comment period too. So if we have specific comments. So I have a question regarding the review process, if I could, please. It looks like in January, what is all part of the review process of the BIP before it's finally adopted to the state? How does this thing fully get approved?
I'll let Russ take that one.
Thank you.
Disappeared.
I'm back. Great question. So what is the review process? So the task ahead for us right now is just really formatting, copy editing, and kind of the refinement of volume 1. So that's ready to go on August 10th. That will be released at the same time as the volume 2 document. And I think, overall, it's probably easiest just to think that the roundtable can make comments from that August through kind of mid-November time period. In reality, we kind of have that kind of more roundtable focused piece in between where we'll take that feedback, make the suggested corrections. I imagine there are a fair amount of comments that may be, we heard this and here's how we addressed it, or here's how we didn't. There could be some of that. But I imagine a lot of it's just, of the copy editing and the review of the roundtables of this is weird, this is weirdly worded, or there's a period missing here, and we would make those corrections, then put that out for public comment, and all the volume 1, volume 2 documents would be out for public comment at the same time. And I imagine that there we would, kind of categorize all the comments that we receive and deliver those back to the roundtable. If there's anything substantive that needs to be changed, we could do that in that December, January timeframe. And then kind of put that out for final, understanding that really, like the water plan, a lot of this is a living document that will continue to evolve.
So if I understand correctly, after Brown and Caldwell, that's it for our BIP then, and then it's ready for adoption in the state water plan?
If I'm hearing, so Brown and Caldwell are helping to refine the volume 1 now. So there's basically through the end of this year, that review time that we would take roundtable and public comment, just on a broad brush, roundtable first, then roundtable plus public comment. And then it would be finalized in January, yes. So at that point, and really in tandem in some ways, because we're now starting to work on drafting the water plan, we will be looking at the BIPs and kind of similar to the first water plan, figuring out how we pull in those new strategies, very similar to the process that was done the first time. Did that answer your question, Alden? Your face tells me maybe no.
Well, that means we're done. I mean, the process has been done. Our BIP's been updated after Brown and Caldwell get done with it. So yeah, that does answer the question. So.
Yeah, I don't think you have a heavy lift in front of you. I just want to be respectful that if you do see something that strikes at you, we will obviously work with you to make whatever changes you think we need to do.
I didn't know if like the CWCB board would weigh into it or CWCB staff, if that's it, but it sounds like Brown and Caldwell is a contractor and what they say is done, that's how it's going to be then.
I mean, you're right, Alden. We're going to look at it too. I don't personally relish in, trying to dive. We've talked about this. I don't really know that we have a strong role in, as long as things fall within the kind of guidelines that were given to us of how to do this to change anything. But staff may see something and just have a question, and I could imagine there might be some fruitful back and forth there. But yeah, I don't think that there's a lot of work ahead. You guys have done a phenomenal job and a really heavy lift, and if we can kind of make this next 6 months as painless as possible, that'd probably be preferred by everyone, I'm sure.
Okay. Other
feedback?
And
I can't imagine a world in which our board looks at other basin IPPs or BIPs and has anything to say about them. I mean, you guys, we had consultants, Tass, Lisa, Dan, and Ryan did an amazing job in our basin. I know the work done in the other basins have been equally, well, probably a little bit less than equally, but done really well as well. And that this just isn't, this place isn't the board's purview. Should be coming out of the basins. We've already had the conversation about demand management and this just strange place that we're in right now with the timing of that and the release of the BIP and how we're not really including that. But that is, I think, the one sort of hands-off item that we're dealing with. And otherwise, the board didn't react to everybody's original BIPs. I just want to say that I'm not going to look at any other basin and tell them what to do. So I don't think you should be concerned about that.
Okay. Ken, I see you got your hand up.
In my chat, I thank CBI, Lisa and Dan and Ryan and Russ. Thank you for all the assistance with the BIP update. My one comment is, I was wondering if you could reassure us that, I mean, the Front Range has done quite well with rain and moisture this year, and since most of you live there, could you reassure us that you understand how serious the situation is over here? That with Mead at the lowest level since it filled 85 years ago, Powell's in critical shape. They're getting ready to release out of the crisp reservoirs to try to augment these flows. I mean, if this is to continue, this leaves us in a terrible situation. Our soil moisture is probably the lowest in our lifetime. This is not, I mean, we're not going to come out of this with a few good storms or even a couple good months. It's going to take years of good precipitation. And, so we're a little edgy. So sorry if we sound that way, but it would be nice to hear that everybody on the eastern side of the divide is at least aware of how serious the situation is on the west slope.
Yes, 100%. You couldn't have said it better, and no need to apologize at all. If anything, I apologize that maybe we don't always do the best job of getting that message out as much as we can. And I talked to Alden about that a week ago. really just, making sure that we're carrying. I mean, I see that as a critical part of my role. And I think all of us at CWCB of sharing these messages with everybody. I talked to Paul Bruchet and Jason Turner last week, and I honestly didn't sleep that well. Just, the impacts are certainly real, and they aren't always felt equally by everyone. But these are the changes that you're talking about are really affecting people's livelihoods. And there's nothing that could be more real than that. And it's something that I believe very strongly that we need to do our best job to capture that sentiment in the water plan. Sometimes we get wrapped around, all of us, around the axle of language and how we need to say things, and we have to be cautious, but that doesn't mean that we can't, call the alarm of these are important issues, and the task ahead of us, the things that we're dealing with, demand management just being one of those. Everything that we're talking about in the BIPs, the things that you're looking at, these are gaps that are gaps absent any other discussion of curtailment or anything else. So these are real issues, and yes, my heart goes out. Fire, among many things, is just one of the things that you didn't mention. And I think Paul Bruchet made the comment to me: we can't win. You got one reservoir getting drained, and then you make an agreement that gets fixed, but then you got a mag chloride spill, and then you got mudslides. I mean, it's a scary year, and I promise you, I'm doing everything I can to carry that forward. I know Director Brown and all of us at CWCB feel that in our hearts.
Guys, I have a question.
Yes, Jeff.
And I don't know who this goes to, or if it's Jackie. I thought I heard when Al asked the question, does this get approved by the consultant? And you said I think you said CWCB doesn't weigh into anything except the role of demand management. Did I hear that right? Is there still a concern about whether demand management is in our BIP or not?
I don't think, choice words, rub. Maybe there's a rub. The short answer, Jeff, is that were you on the Big River Committee meeting the other night?
Yes.
So the answer hasn't changed. We have a different pot of money for demand management, and we're still, like I said earlier, in the feasibility investigation with that. And so until demand management becomes a program of the CWCB, and I should say until and unless that becomes a program, there's really it's not in the Colorado Water Plan. We're not addressing this as a program. It wasn't lined out in this update to address demand management. And I recognize that that's an issue. And I know we talked a little bit at the Big River Committee about how it will be addressed if it does become a program. And, off the top of my head, I think options could be a supplement to the water plan where each of the basins weigh in on the program, whatever. But right now, I don't think that the intent of the plan update is to address statewide policy from a basin standpoint that doesn't yet exist. And so, I understand, to use your term, that where the rub could come in, but it's just a non-starter. And I did talk with Al a little bit, and how at the beginning of this update that we started, there did seem to be some sort of space to address demand management. But we tasked our consultants not to do that. And I don't know how we change course at this point. I frankly was a little surprised that we wanted to include that, but I have missed some Big River Committee meetings, so I understand. I can see both sides, but we're not going to get into demand management policies from each basin in this update. And that's not the board. That's the way the funding is set down from the legislature. That was always the case. I thought we were more clear on it, but now I'm recognizing that maybe there are things we could have done differently to be a little bit more transparent about, you know, not wanting these principles in there, or I mean, not wanting to address it so intensely, but we didn't know that we would have principles. You know, it's kind of cart before the horse, and I know I'm rambling, so I get it. It's not going to make everybody happy. It's not the answer that makes everyone happy.
I guess I just look at who decides what goes into our own plan. That's us.
Well, yes, but the funding that was given to the state to investigate demand management was given for the tasks that we have accomplished and that lay forward for demand management. And it wasn't to be addressed within this water plan update because it doesn't exist yet. And I understand it's not the answer you want to hear, but it's the answer that exists. And so I don't know how we change it. It wasn't a board decision. This was, I don't know, Russ. I mean, what do you think? You know, you and I talked a little bit about this. It complicates it because not every other basin went out and did these principles. So then we would, you know, if we decided we were going to address it, we'd have to ask permission from the legislature to use this funding. It's just, it's confusing, a bit complicated. Maybe Russ can do a better job than I am.
But no, you're doing a great job. And Jeff, let me just say too, I sincerely appreciate the great work that you guys have put in, and big thanks as always to Tom and Jeff, who I just think do a phenomenal job and are just, I really rely on to kind of keep me straight on any given day. And I know they'll always call me, Tom calling me from Mexico sometimes to check in, and it means so much to me. But the bottom line is the way that the BIPs were set out and the way, you know, a little bit of a fundamental change than was done the first time. And this really coming from state procurement, that we were not allowed to pull money out of WSRF. And in retrospect, the way the budget has gone, that was a very good thing that they ruled that way, but they very much see it as a shared document. It's a state document. It's funded by CWCB and the CWCB board. And with that funding, the direction from board and legislature was that we just have some sensitive areas that we honestly just have to steer clear from, that so that we're making sure that we're not creating legal conflict. And in this case of DM specifically, outside of the topics that Director Brown touched on, there's also just the issue that there is a CWCB board policy, and we can't print something in which is kind of a shared state document that conflicts with things that the CWCB board policy says. Now, in many cases, what you guys have put together, there's many points of alignment, and there's some that are not. And I understand how that can feel like a rub, and I don't think it's meant to diminish the great work that you guys have put in any way, detract from it, or even call attention away from it. So the way that we proposed kind of handling that was, and working with Tom, Jeff, and Alden were very kind to craft some language that we could start to put in that would say, basically, this is important to us, and here's where you can go find the link for more information. So keeping the actual kind of principles outside of the document, because the last thing I think we want to trigger is some kind of armoring up where now every basin has to have principles, and does that really help anyone? There's good work to mine here, but I think, let's build from that in a constructive way, and make sure that we're not doing something that puts us in a bad spot.
I think we're at a point where we need to get wrapping this up and get moving on with our agenda as well. So unless there's any dire comments and feedback that we would give, I see we got one hand raised yet. Tom, you chimed in. Last comment, and we'll see where this goes. We can move on. Tom, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Alden. Well, I just wanted to say, the conversation just in the last few minutes about demand management, I think if we could rise above that for a minute, and my comment is that the basin implementation plans are from the basins, from the ground up, and we hear that a lot, and we have always pretty much believed that. So the idea that anything, in this case, it was demand management, but that if a basin decided they wanted to put in their BIP that they thought the moon was made out of cheese, then I think it's problematic if that, even though that's not productive, it's problematic, and you probably wouldn't get consensus on the roundtable to put that in. But I would hope not. But so I just want to say, I think it's bigger than just demand management. And I think Alden's question at the beginning was, because we've talked, was let's make sure that we don't get the message out there too strongly that, yes, you're in charge of your BIP unless we don't want what you have in it to be there. So that's just a comment.
Understood.
Okay. All right, I think we'll conclude this discussion and move on to the next items on our agenda. Good discussion, everyone. Thanks everyone for chiming in here. So the comment period, when it's open, I'm sure Lisa, you'll be sharing a link, or somehow we'll get a link to everyone so that they can review and provide their comments to the BIP when that opportunity opens up. So
absolutely. Thanks guys so much for the time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for your whole team and everything that you guys did working through this mess with us.
Yep, absolutely.
Herding wet cats, you guys did a good job. So, all right. So next on the agenda, we're going to be moving into reports from our standing committees. Tom and Jeff, Big River Committee and IBCC. That's what I have up in here. So Tom or Jeff, I'm not sure which one of you will be leading the update here.
Al, I think I'm going to lead off, and Tom's going to come in just a little bit.
Okay.
So our committee report, we're going to try to keep it as short as we can here. There are about 4 main items. A couple of them have already been touched on. Sam mentioned that the IBCC meeting for June was canceled. And also he mentioned the very significant fact that Russ George has retired. So we don't have much to say right now on the IBCC front. We do have opportunity, in addition to all of the feedback that we've provided around demand management. Tom and I received a request yesterday to go to the survey and fill that out. So he and I are probably going to have to put our heads together and coordinate a little bit of that effort. Speaking of demand management, if you haven't heard that term enough tonight, just real quickly, you know that your Big River Committee did put together a feedback document directly addressing the DM framework that was published by CWCB. A lot of good effort by your committee folks went into that. And that, Jackie's asking if we can put that on the website. So I'm afraid maybe we haven't. I will make sure that that does happen, Jackie. If it didn't, it's my bad. So we know that CWCB staff received that feedback document because Al and Tom and Jeff participated in a listening session about a week ago, and Greg Johnson, who's Amy Ostadike's boss, and Emily and Anaya facilitated that. And Greg made reference to the fact that they got the feedback document. So it was sent to every CWC board member, and it was entered officially through the portal to follow the protocol. So feedback wise, we have given them about everything that we can. For those of you who were not quite in the know, that last conversation about taking the language out of the BIP and restricting that a little bit, there is a specific paragraph that was written by Tom and me and edited, reviewed by Claire. And I didn't see that in the meeting packet, Al. That's probably my bad also. So I can get you another copy of that to put up on the web if that makes sense. And it's just a brief description of why we think demand management is significant, and a link to our website where you can read the 7 principles. So we've been trying as hard as we can at the Big River Committee to get beyond demand management, and that was the theme of our Monday's meeting, which we just held. You have the presentation from that meeting in your packet. We discussed 4 or 5 good, very substantial topics to drill into going forward. Those include the interim operating agreement, which is due to be negotiated. It expires in 2026. Storage, and I'm reminded from Deidre's comments earlier that we obviously need to expand our horizons for the storage discussion, and it might be something that she would be interested in contributing to. Forest and ecosystem health, understanding the curtailment method. We had a recent adder to that list from T-Ride about the Flaming Gorge releases that have seemed to come up quite suddenly, and then an extreme drought scenario. So where we are right now is we are in sort of education and prioritization mode. If you look at that presentation in your packet, there are 6 questions there for each of those topics that we're discussing at the committee level, and hopefully through that discussion, those things will sort of bubble to the top. But I think I'm going to hand over to Tom really to talk just a little bit about, starting with that state engineer's office curtailment, maybe expand on that. And he was listening in on the Flaming Gorge thing and the extreme drought scenario idea. So Tom, why don't you take it?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I'll just try to go quickly. We all know how dry it is, and we all know how low the flows are and how low the reservoirs are. And we know that this whole world that we live in since COVID seems to be turned on its head. And what we would have thought a couple of years ago would never come about, we now are aware could come about. Many of us, several of us, were at presentations from Kevin Ryan a year ago or even less, where he said, I'm going to develop some curtailment rules, some measurement rules, but really we don't have any fear of any kind of contract or compact curtailment possibility, or getting close to even before 2026. We got plenty of time, and that was kind of his message. He's now saying, depending on hydrology for another year, we could see a crisis in 2022 as far as the lake levels and the amount we can deliver. So what I'm about to say is kind of a fishing trip. We talked at the Big River Committee, and this is about the Big River Committee. What's going to be beneficial for the roundtable to talk about now that we've kind of hashed over demand management till we don't want to do it anymore for the time being. And in this extreme drought, what are the options and probabilities that might come about, since it is as dry and low flows and the reservoirs are where they're at? What are the things that could happen, and should we get ourselves informed? I want to say that I'm not plugging a perspective, I'm plugging what should we get informed about question. And I think we need to get ourselves informed, possibly, or do we, about what emergency action could the Department of Interior take. They've been shutting off federal projects in other basins. The Klamath River Basin comes to mind. They are, of course, that was part of our DCP. We knew about the Flaming Gorge and other federal reservoir releases in our own basin. What are the other possibilities that could come up? And I guess a second one is, does the upper basin have a delivery obligation to the lower basin? or does it have a non-depletion obligation such as to cause flows to go below 7.5 or 75 million over 10 years? There's quite a debate going on. That's been in the background for years because of the language of the compact. But what we know, I think we need to get ourselves informed, is that the upper basin has been depleting for the last 20 years around 4.4 million acre feet total, all 4 upper basin states. This year, we are slated to deplete about 3.6. And that's because of 2 things. The prior appropriation system is kicking in and people are being called out in local basins. And the second one is there's just not water there. Many people are on the tributaries are curtailing, and they're reducing their consumptive use because they don't have the water. So when you think about that, that's a 700,000 acre foot demand management that the upper basin is doing right now. And when you think of 500,000 over a 5-year period from a demand management program, that starts to look pretty small for what we're already doing. I think I'm throwing that out there. Do we need to get ourselves informed about the big picture of what probably could happen, and where is the upper basin and where's Colorado in that picture? So I'll just leave it at that. But that's the purpose of what Jeff and I are talking about in our Big River Committee the other night was to flesh out, where do you want us to go from here? What should we be talking about? So I'll leave it at that.
Tom, is there any
Okay,
indication
thanks,
of
Tom.
the size of the releases that you might see out of the Flaming Gorge Reservoir?
Say that again, Ken. I didn't hear the first part.
Have they given any indication at the amount of water being released, the cubic feet per second, to release out of Flaming Gorge for support of the Lake Powell?
I haven't heard any amounts, and that goes to T. Wright's very appropriate question of we need some say and we need to be involved in how it's released and when it's released to make sure the local conditions are affected. But I haven't heard. Maybe T. Wright has.
T. Wright, you want to take it?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so today what we heard in our call from Bureau Rec, they're going to move a total of 181,000 acre feet out of the crisp reservoirs to Powell, starting tomorrow with Flaming Gorge. They're going to move a total of 125,000 acre feet out of Flaming Gorge, June, July, and September. They're going to move out of Blue Mesa 36,000 acre feet over July, or did I for Flaming Gorge I meant July, August, and September, and then from Blue Mesa 36,000 starting in July, August, and a little bit in September, and then 20,000 acre feet from Navajo that will move in 10,000 acre foot increments in November and December. And that is the first round. And we're asking for more information on what may be coming in our future. And no one really knows, but they thought they had 2 years a cushion in front of them, and over this last few months, and actually I guess in the last 10 days, they realized that they'd lost a year and they would be below 35.25 in January of 22, and so they're taking these steps to try to fend that off, and then so it. I guess it's real, and like I asked earlier, we would all like to be a little more involved, or at least know that the people who are negotiating for the states know what our issues of concern are. It will lower Flaming Gorge in this initial deal by about 6 feet, and then it'll fill back. So the total drop for this year will only amount to about a 3-foot drop. If they moved a second shot of water, then that could have impacts on the flat water for next year, and by the amount of boats that come from Steamboat and drive by me going to Flamin' Gorge, I'm sure everybody wants to be involved in this conversation. That's what I can tell you from today, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just going to wrap this committee report up with the fourth item, which Ken serviced earlier. The very last page of your meeting packet is a resolution regarding the federal infrastructure bill and funding, capably drafted by Ken and even more capably edited by Claire. They're our crack team there. They turned that thing around in a hurry. It is page 26 of your meeting packet. Rather than have you read through that, though, maybe Ken, do you want to just hit the high points for us real quick? We've only got about 30 seconds left of our 15 minutes of fame, but hit the high points, would you, Ken?
Thank you. I'd be glad to. This came up in our discussions in the Big River Committee, and Pat O'Toole was the one who first brought this to our attention. Bennett has a proposal for $60 billion that would move into this type of support for infrastructure grants that is not otherwise included. We discussed potentially just waiting and leaving this discussion for a later date in September, but there seemed to be some real urgency in that. If you've been following the news, there could be an infrastructure project or act approved sooner, way before September, and that the committee hearings are taking place now. Pat also pointed out that we've been conspicuously absent from, Western Colorado hasn't really Bennett commenting as much as they might. So we discussed the potential of getting something from the Yampa-White-Green Basin Roundtable that says that we think that that's a good idea and that we want to support that. So that's essentially what the sentences down there at the bottom, therefore be it resolved, is we think that this is a good idea. We can unanimously, was just me editing in, hopefully support from everyone. But we need to have a vote. I want to apologize for the very short turnaround. This was on, I think it was about 8 o'clock on Monday night that I started working on this. So we haven't really had a chance to fully vet this. But if you are comfortable with it, please let's support, and we'll get this off to the appropriate representation with Senator Bennett.
And Kent, this T-Right.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
If you move it, I'll second it.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Yampa-White-Green Basin Roundtable tonight approve this resolution as described by Ken and included in the meeting packet.
And T-Right, can I take that as your second yet?
He's muted.
Okay, can we get a second on this thing? I
I'll
want to
second.
confirm. All right, thank you. There we got Tom Gray coming up. So let's, any discussion on this? Okay, I'm going to call it then. All in favor of adopting this resolution drafted July 14th for 2021 as proposed in front of us to signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other business that you gentlemen have?
No, that'll do it. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep,
moving
thanks.
on. Jackie
Thank
did
you,
her.
everybody.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Division Water Resource Engineer, Aaron Light. Aaron, are you with us yet tonight? There you are.
Yes, I am. Yes. So tonight I'm just going to talk about a few things. As most of you know, the abandonment objection period did end on July 1st. I'm quite thankful that it ended because we were receiving quite a few objections in the month of June. I would say in the month of June alone, we probably received 200 objections. In total, we're probably up to close to 300 objections. So our office obviously has a lot of work to get through those objections now. So in that process, is objections independently and then respond to all of those objections with an answer of whether or not we're going to remove the water right from the list or not. And then, so we hope to have a response to all those objections by November 30th. And then we have to produce a final, or really it's what's called a revised list that will be submitted to the water court. And that has to be submitted to the water court by December 31st. Once it's submitted to the water court will publish that list just like would publish a water court case, and it does get a case number. It will be a 20 CW case number. And then people have then the ability to protest their water right being on that revised list, and they have until July 1st of 2022. So that's kind of where we are on the abandonment process. Then as far as calls on the river, we do have still a lot of calls on the river on various systems. I shouldn't say the river, but on various systems. I'll just kind of go through a list. Right now in the North Platte River Basin, we only have the Illinois River on call. We did have the Michigan for quite some time on call, and that just went off. We have the Bear River on call, 2 different calls on Peance Creek, call on South Hunt, North Hunt Creeks, Brinker Creek, Elkhead Creek, which is a new call. We typically we have not had a call on Elkhead Creek before. We have a call on Trout Creek, Oak Creek, Marapis Creek, Little Bear Creek, Talamanis Creek. And then I spent about 2 hours today on the phone with staff discussing a potential call on the Little Snake River. So that's where we sit on our current administration. And as always, as everyone knows, you can go look at our calls on our website, the DWR website. Then just wanted to touch base on reservoir releases. We did start, I'm trying to think if it's been 2 or 3 phone calls now, but the Yampa, the Elkhead coordination calls started. Today was either the 2nd or 3rd meeting that we had. It was decided that at the conclusion of today's meeting that the recovery program will be starting a release of water from Elkhead Creek Reservoir at a rate of 20 CFS. That release will start on Friday afternoon is when that release will happen. For those who don't know how those target flows are set, the recovery program did set the 93 CFS target flows. That happens when the flows are 25% or less of percent of average. So we're obviously well below that 25% percentile, and releases will begin starting on Friday afternoon. So given that, our water commissioners, both Brian Romig and Sarah Myers, are going to be out running and working the river tomorrow to see what people are diverting and making sure head gates are in the river so that when the reservoir water is released, that water's not picked up. Then just one other note on reservoir releases. I'll just let you guys know that we did, the state engineer's office, myself, did approve an expedited loan it's a loan agreement between CWCB and CPW. And that expedited loan agreement is for releases of water from Lake Avery into the White River that will provide additional water for the in-stream flow reach. The in-stream flow reach on the White River goes from the confluence of the South Fork and North Fork of the White River down to Peance Creek. So these flows will will assist, or the releases will assist with flows on the White River between where Little Beaver Creek comes into, or Big Beaver Creek comes into the White River all the way down to Piance Creek. And that's all I have to report, Alden.
I'm in your busy office.
We're busy. We're very busy office. Yes. Yeah.
Nobody's standing around for sure. I'm sure on that. So yeah. So let's hope things improve and we can kind of slack off here a little bit. But so thank you.
We'll need more water for that.
Anybody have anything they want to talk with Aaron about right now?
Alden, this T-Ride, am I on?
Yes, sir, you are. We can hear you.
Question, Aaron, have you gotten all of the staff positions filled that you need?
No, we haven't. So right now we sit 3 people down still. You know, again, just a reminder to people, we're a 12 person show, including myself, and we're still 3 people down. We still do not have a deputy water commissioner in the White River Basin. We are currently actually now have our lead water commissioner in the North Platte River Basin vacant. Our deputy is filled, but our lead is vacant. And then the one that affects you more, T-Right, is our 54-55 water commissioner is vacant. And for some of you who don't know, it actually was before that our District 44 water commissioner position was vacant. Our water commissioner that had been in districts 54, 55, and 56 has moved into that District 44 position. It was actually a promotion for her to move in that position, leaving her old position vacant. But as far as T-Right, as far as you're concerned, we do have a temporary employee in that position that should be able to work full time until about the middle of August. And then he'll have to go to part-time, and eventually come fall, he'll no longer be working as a temporary.
Is there anything that we can be doing to help you get those holes filled for you, Aaron?
I think right now everything's really caught up in human resources than it is anything else. With our human resources group, the individuals in human resources have had to fill positions both with CPW and DWR, and I think their time has been so overwhelmed with filling the CPW positions that most DWR positions have been put on the back burner. So I don't think there is anything we can do. You know, our staff is pushing HR as much as they can to get the positions filled, but we have gotten the go ahead to fill all the positions. So that is a good thing. We're no longer holding any of our positions vacant. It's just caught up in human resources.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, T-Right.
Aaron, this is Mike Camblin.
Yeah.
What did they decide to release on Friday? How much water?
Just 20 CFS is all they're releasing, which might be a fairly reasonable flow to start with. You've probably seen the hydrograph. We're, I think, around 92 CFS now, but earlier today we were around 75. The hydrograph's looking a little funny. It's pretty sporadic, but we did see some flows as low as 75 today. So I think it makes sense to start out at a lower release. They are predicting, they being Don Anderson with the recovery program, is predicting that with the amount of water they have in the reservoir, it's very likely that they cannot meet the target flow of 93 CFS. And so he's kind of setting his eyes at 80 to meet 80. But you know, right now I think he's going to go ahead and put forth the effort to hit that 93, but eventually he might be just trying to hit 80 at the Mayville Canal. I mean, at the Mayville gauging station.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Aaron, are there, well, Ken could probably answer this. Are there any releases being done out of Stagecoach now for the flow augmentation, you know, Colorado Water Trust stuff?
There is not. There's not any water being released. Mm-mm.
Not yet. There's some in the works, but not yet.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron, could you clarify? You said that there's a target flow of 93 that's part of the endangered species. Did you say that when you see 25% less than that, you target releases? Or did you say if it got to be less than 25% of the target flow?
25% of the, it's not 25% of the target flow. It's when the flows in the river are 25% of average. And that's not the exact wording, but it is in their documentation. So it is when it looks like we're going to have flows at around 25% or less of average.
Thank you.
Take that as the last comment, and we're going to move along. We've got a couple more items yet. Steve's got to present here on our grant committees. So thank you, Aaron. If there are other questions, feel free to use the chat box as well. Steve, you're up. I know you've got a presentation tonight. I know there's the rules. There's been a little bit of an adoption where the rules have kind of changed a little bit that we need to kind of just integrate. So let's have you at the floor, but I'm going to hold you to 10 minutes because we've got other business to follow as well. So the clock starts ticking when you start presenting.
Okay, so Patrick or somebody can put the presentation up. Because I wasn't planning on having control transferred to me.
Do they have the presentation? Did you email it to them?
Yeah, so the presentation is on the website.
Well, can we just start?
Yeah, so I've got it up. So what we want to talk about today is the status of the 2021 grant program. Talk about the new CWCB rules, and Jackie and Sam have hit on those pretty well. We want to talk about this Basin. So next slide, please. We want to talk about the Yampa-White-Green Basin guidelines that are updated. They're in your packet as well. I want to talk about what funds will be available for the grant committee to consider for the September recommendation, and when will the 2022 grant program begin. So next slide. So this is you've all seen this. I did want to show this. I had some conversations with Ben today, but we allocated $220,000 for the 2021 grant program. We ended up spending $22,550, or about $2,500 more dollars. But when I was talking with Ben, this $200,000 that could hit our account by the end of this month, what they were talking about was the city of Craig and the town of Oak Creek have about almost $130,000 of grant funds that will get approved this month at the CWCB meeting, hopefully. And what they'll do is they'll take and subtract that from the 200,000, leaving about $61,250 or something. And then when TNC does their 34,000 in September, if that gets approved, then they would take that away from that 200,000. So really almost all of the 200,000 that's kind of got a time limit on it will go out on grants for this year. So I just wanted to hit on that a little bit. So that's kind of a summary. Next slide. So the new guidance, forget all the stuff on the top, you can read that, but the newly adopted policy changes, the bullet points down there at the bottom, for grant requests for up to $50,000, the CWCB director now has the authority to approve those without board authorization. The grant requests from $50,001 to $99,999 will be placed on the consent agenda for approval by the board. And that's what I think Sam and Jackie were both talking about, that the two grants, that we have before the board in July will both be on the consent agenda. And then grant requests that are $100,000 or greater will be added to each board meeting agenda and will include a presentation to the board by CWCB staff. So that's kind of the changes that they've made for this go round. Next slide. So based upon our original grant guidelines being put forth in 2017, there are a lot of updates and timelines that have happened in the past 4 years. And I took the existing guidelines and we kind of rewritten them in 2019, but we never got around to presenting them because of the COVID, and we went to these internet meetings. So the guidelines needed update. So I've done that. The multiple members of the original grant guidelines that are actually on the CWCB website now aren't even on the grant committee, and some of those aren't even any longer on the Basin Roundtable. So we need to take their contact, those names off, and the contact form and all of that. The intent of these revised guidelines is to have them loaded on the CWCB website for informational purposes. Our grants page is also being updated with the same information so that we can link to it. And if you go to the next slide, what you'll see is, and it's not a very good, but that's a web shot of the CWCB WSRF grant web page. And at the bottom, the very bottom one is the Yampa-White. It shows me as the grant contact, and and it has my email and my phone number. And then it says guidelines. So if you click on that guidelines, it brings up what I've put in the packet, or so it brings up the original 2017. What I want to do is get with Jackie or Sam or Ben or whoever can make it happen, is put those new guidelines so that they come up when you press on that. And you know, everything that we do in those guidelines is still overseen by the CWCB. They've still got their rules that they have to play by. And those guidelines actually take you back to our grants page as well. So I put those out. I traded emails with Alden today. My thought was we didn't really need to approve the guidelines, although we did back in 2017 because it was the first time anybody'd seen them. But almost every time that CWCB changes something in their program, we have to update these guidelines, and we haven't done that over the course of the last 4 years. So I don't know, Alden, if you want to ask the committee what kind of input they want into that, if they want to approve those. But I mean, I can see at the rate that we've seen changes to those guidelines, I could see updating them almost every year. Some years, maybe twice a year.
Well, and Steve, you're absolutely correct, because that is something that, but as the CWCB updates their guidelines, we have to update ours as well. So it's just mandatory that we have to do it. We don't have a choice. So
I have a question. I'm sorry, when you're ready.
Update all the time, or if we can just kind of just or approve an update through the group, or can we just move this through?
Well, before you move forward, I have a question. I just like to just say first to Steve, I think you continue to do an amazing job on this very complicated part of what the Yampa-White-Green does, which is very, very important. So thank you. I recall a conversation, I think it was a year ago, regarding the absence of a criteria, and maybe that's different than guideline. I was looking in the packet and I didn't see criteria, but it had to do with public good. And I recall there being, a very intriguing project that Travis Day voted against, And when he was asked why, he said, it's a good project, but it has no real public benefit. And this group may have a very diverse opinions on whether the money that we give out should have a public benefit or not. I personally agree with Travis and think it should. But I didn't see anything about that, Steve. So perhaps you could comment on that. Maybe criteria is different from guidelines. So this is not the right time to discuss it. I've been very intermittent at your meetings and I apologize, but I do appreciate what you do. So could you comment, Steve, on whether public good is currently in there, could be included, and maybe this is something for the group to at some point discuss, because I think one of the most important things we do is give away money to good ideas. And I think the subject of whether they have a public good is an important one for this group to discuss, whether it should be considered when we give those funds. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe that question's better off for committee. I don't know. So Steve, if you've got a short answer.
No, I've got a short answer. So the guidelines is really the process of how this all works, Deidre. When we do a meeting and we rank the projects, that's where that criteria come into play for how much public participation and those sorts of things. So we're always open to have that discussion in our grant committee meetings. In fact, at the last one, we were going to discuss it. You couldn't make it. So we booted it to the next one when perhaps you could, but that's the appropriate place is in those scoring matrix. That's where you really get into the nitty gritty. This is just, this guideline that we're talking about is simply the process. When, where, how, and how do I get money?
Okay. We're getting down to the final minutes here, Steve. So
okay, so let's move on unless anybody's got a major heartburn on that. I want to make sure that we get to the rest of this. So we talked about this 200,000, and you heard from Jackie and you heard from Sam about that. So we have $172,750 of grants for the July and the September CWCB meetings. That would leave us with a balance of about $520,740 to, however you do the math, the 200,000 would be either allocated before or after, but we ought to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $720,000 for our in September when we go to allocating. So you can read all about what exactly happened in House Bill 21-1260. Because this presentation is up on the staff. Next slide. So, and then I just wanted to remind folks of the 2022 grant cycle. We'll make the recommendation for how much we want to put up for 2022 at our Basin Roundtable meeting in September. First application date is the second to last Wednesday in September. I'll have a meeting in October. And then hopefully we'll forward those to the committee in November. Second cycle is the last Wednesday in January. Third cycle is the last Wednesday in March. So I just wanted to remind folks, this is coming up, but you will get a chance to see how much money we potentially have and how much we want to put in the 2022 grant program. And I believe that's my last slide.
Hey. Okay, let's keep moving forward here. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. As always, you do a very nice job. So, Callie, you're up with the White River Integrated Water Initiative update.
All right. Thank you very much. I think I will be more brief than the 10 minutes, so maybe that can buy us a little bit of time. So our Planning Advisory Committee met again here just this last week, and we had the updates from the diversion assessments as well as the riparian health assessments. and talking about how we're going to move forward and so forth. I anticipate we'll be having quite a few speakers on the various topics that we think we want to address. We'll be bringing some speakers in to address those issues. So our reach, so as you may recall, we've divided the White River into 3 reaches, and then we have the Piance Creek reach. And each one of those reaches will be having public input sessions again in August. And our focus of that is just kind of go over what the goals, the primary mission statement and the goals are, and make sure that people are comfortable with that as we begin to build on each one of the reaches, build their, I guess you want to call it, objectives that will help reach those goals. So just kind of clarifying that piece. And our diversion structure assessments are moving along. We've had a couple of assessments as well as the 2 workshops that we had planned, and actually ended up with a 3rd workshop in the Piance Basin. And then the riparian health assessments, we have been, BLM just finished up their training for the group that'll go out and do the PFC, let's see, that's proper functioning conditioning assessments. They'll finish they just finished the 2 days of the online training. And then next week we will go out into the field and have training as well. So that is a full-fledged training with that. And I'm pretty excited about it because we do have a good handful of landowners that are participating in that, as well as our agency folks that are going to be doing those assessments. And then our plan is to try to have all of those assessments done by this fall so that we can use that information to help us develop our 3rd phase for the process. So any questions on it? But other than that, I think that's a really quick update.
Anything from anyone?
And just a
want to
quick,
say, I think you've done a great job. You've hired some great people to help you coordinate, and things like look like they're moving along very efficiently and really working on getting the public input. So well done.
Thank you. I'm really happy with the 2 gals that we have. I think they're probably online listening now. And then also know that we do keep it's on the district's website is the initiatives page, or there a page on our website that we keep all the notes and information on there, so anyone can access that at any time. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Nicole, I should get my agenda up so I know who I'm talking about here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Nicole, you were next on the agenda. I didn't know if it was you or who, so you're up, Nicole.
Yep.
I know
Thank you, and thanks. Yeah, this will be super fast. So there's a written report that is on the Google Drive website for the roundtable. And so I'm not going to go through and read this for you guys, but it is up there so you can get a sense of, where we're at. We have 3 work groups that are currently meeting: the Ag Infrastructure Work Group, there's a Riparian and Natural Bank Stability Work Group, and then there's a Flows and Shortages Work Group. And we have been working for the last month and a half on basically lining out all of the work that we want to do next. And we're getting close. We're starting to talk to contractors and write scopes of work for several things. Patrick Stanko did a really deep dive review on the diversion assessment, and they're building some evaluation criteria for project recommendations. And so we have an August 12th IWMP committee meeting, and we'll have quite a bit to share with the group there. But on this document up here, you guys can, read it yourself and see, where we're at with all of the different items that we're looking at. The other thing I did want to mention is we have been, with Jenna Hankmeyer's help, we've been putting together neighborhood meetings for irrigators. We've had 2 so far. We had one in Maybell and one in Craig. And our next one is going to be in Hayden at the Granary on Saturday. That's from, I think it's from noon to 2. So if you live in that area and you're interested in meeting with some of the irrigators that we interviewed and did diversion assessments with in the sort of middle Yampa Hayden area, we will be at the Granary from noon to 2. And then there's one scheduled for Clark a couple weeks after that. And then we're scheduling a South Route one with Jeff Klinke from the Ag Alliance for sometime later this summer. So those are going well. The participation is small. I will say it's not like we have 50 people coming to them, but there are a lot of really good conversations happening. The NRCS is coming, and TNC and TU, and Jenna and our IWMP representatives. We're having some really good conversations one-on-one with the irrigators about next steps for their for projects that they would like to do on their structures. So I'm hopeful that we'll have some good results from those neighborhood meetings. So that is what we are up to. If you want to be added to the email list for the IWMP, just shoot me an email. You can also email Doug Monger, and we'll get you, signed up so you can get all the meeting materials and stuff. That's all I have.
Any brief feedback before we move on?
So this is Doug Monger. I just, we started off this meeting tonight. We talked about grants and infrastructure and the rest, and CWCB money and the rest. And I guess we need to stay on that task here somehow. And this whole IWMP kind of accentuates the fact that we're going out there and asking people, what are your problems and how can we help you solve them? And how can we bring money to the table? Yet we just heard of a presentation by Steve Hinkemeyer, very good presentation again, and yet we're still fighting the game to find money here. So we have a lot of good public will, public good purpose projects that could really make a lot of difference to a lot of people. So I'm just still beating the band drum that I started off tonight's meeting with the federal infrastructure monies and how we can get some more money back into our infrastructures and benefit us. And we know right now, and I'll get off my soapbox in a second, but we know this summer how important water is and how important our water infrastructure is. So I'll quit at that, but we need to keep advocating. We're going out there hunting projects that we can help with, but we got to help them find money to be able to do those projects. So thank you.
Correct. Yep. Okay, moving on. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Nicole. Peppo, Patrick, I know you're going to be probably providing an update here. And as everybody knows, we lost Kelly, and she's moved on to bigger and better opportunities. And I know Patrick's been instrumental in keeping our Peppo committee, and he's a substantial volunteer for our group as well. And he stays involved with Community Ag Alliance all over the place. So I'd like to, Patrick, I think if you have something to update, I would like that. But I would also like to talk with the group after you're done visiting about the Peppo chair.
Okay, yeah, so just some quick updates. Hopefully you guys have been hearing the radio ads on Steamboat Radio and KRAI. We are running the old ads from a couple of years ago. I'm going to be trying to develop some new ads here, probably using the drought and the BIP update as the focus of those radio ads. Next week and for the 6 following weeks, we've got some print ads coming out in all 3 local newspapers about the BIP update, providing the timeline, what we've done for all the goals within the BIP or achievements and the added objectives, and then what are the new challenges facing the roundtable. So that's going to be running for the next 6 weeks, weekly in each newspaper, regional newspaper. Look for those, please. I have an announcement. Because of Kelly, we've been tasked and asked to help support a legislative drought tour. So August 11th and 12th, we are going to probably have state legislature, state government, state officials, maybe even some federal legislatures coming on a tour. Unfortunately, we're just going to have time for the Yampa Valley to tour the Yampa Valley, but we're going to from Steamboat down to Craig over those 2 days and talking about drought. That plan is in development. So Alden, hopefully you're going to be around August 11th because we could use your help there as chair of the roundtable to come speak to these legislatures and state officials.
Let's talk afterwards about that as well. So thank you.
Okay. So that's coming up. That's about I have it for the update.
Okay, thank you. Is this just, Patrick, and I'll ask right now, is this just a Yampa-centric type drought update, or does this include our Yampa-White-Green Basin?
This includes the Yampa-White-Green Basin, and actually it's including Western Slope, okay? I mean, this is focused on drought overall. We're using this tour like they did a couple years ago in the Southwest Basin when they toured the extreme drought down there. This is going to be covering the extreme drought. We're going to be looking at ag producers, talking about forest health. We're going to, say how this impact is so that they can understand why those funds and those emergency declarations are important for the people of Western Slope, but specifically, the Yampa-White-Green Basin.
I'm glad that we have something like this going forward, because we have areas and that just don't have storage. And I'll tell you what, you talk about a part of the world that's puckering right now. Talk to the town of Rangeley and some of these ranchers here that they got brown grass already. So, and they've been deficit irrigation for years. So I'll get off my soapbox and move on to the other business with Peppo here. So sorry about that, but
no, but that's what we are. So
yeah,
we're gonna attack probably some different roundtable members about coming and speaking, being either press speakers or being at stops to speak. So look forward to that as it's in development, and it's going to come quickly since it's August 11th.
Understand. So, okay. I do have that day available, but I know that evening we have an initiative meeting, but I will be available for that there. So, with Kelly stepping down, we have an opportunity for our chair. And I've solicited some interest. I've visited with a few folks here, but I haven't had anybody really come forward. So, a bunch of people. I've had Ken Brenner visited with me earlier here, and he's expressed some interest. But he also informed me that if there's anybody that has a burning interest, that they're encouraged to please come forward. And I expressed that as well. Kelly left an outstanding opportunity here for somebody to just kind of transition in. She ran a tight ship, and that's for darn sure. She left a master plan or a plan in place. She's got some great people with Yampa-Tika and Patrick to kind of help facilitate this and do a lot of the day-to-day activities. But there still needs to be that piece of it. So I don't know if we're looking at getting a thank you, Deirdre. I just seen your note down there in the bottom. I don't know if we're looking for a motion on that right now or yet. But I'm just throwing that out there. And if there's anybody, please let me know, because this is a crucial position that's highly involved that we need somebody to fill. So we're looking for volunteers. So, anybody have any?
Say something real
Go
quick?
ahead. Yes, sir. Mr. Brenner.
One of the things I want to do is make sure I talk with the board of directors for the Upper Yampa, and we meet next week just to make sure that they're comfortable with me making an additional commitment like this. I'm still debating whether or not to talk to my wife about it, and I want to make sure that I have a chance to talk with Patrick and Michelle, and of course I want to spend a little bit of time with Yampa-Tika, but unless somebody really wants to do this, I am pretty serious about trying to step up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. And I think you would be a really good fit to do that position. So anything else with Peppo here? Okay, I'm going to start wrapping us up here. I'm moving on to item 9 with the announcements. We've had several folks here that have been actually out searching for us to have a meeting place so that we can start meeting in person. September, we will be meeting in person. We're working still on the pavilion over there in Craig, but we know the acoustics are problematic over there, and to have an adequate hybrid meeting that the CWCB is requiring for us here with that piece, acoustics is something that we have to do a webinar. I've also been visiting with CNCC in Craig, and they've got a room that they're willing to look at or offer us as well, and I'll be reviewing that facility next week. So, and then there's another one that I visited with the Meeker Fire Hall in Meeker. It can seat about 50, 60 people in there. It's a very nice facility with incredible meeting hall for training for firemen, and it is available. So, and I've seen that one already. So we have some options out there, but we're rummaging through and seeing what's going to be best for us. So I'm looking forward to getting us all here to meet in person. So.
Hey, Al, I have a question for you. This is Jackie.
Yes, ma'am.
Given the hardship of finding a great location, should we think about rotating meeting locations again?
That's where I'm looking at potentially bouncing between Craig and Meeker. And I don't know if I can have a meeting hall in Rangeley or Steamboat. I'm sure Steamboat's got something up there, or Hayden, because I think there's value to get more public exposure to our group. But I know Craig has always been kind of an easy centralistic part of the world for us. So
sure.
But I know that is something that I'm looking at, and maybe if we can get 2 or 3 sites and just start moving around, that might be something that we look at. So, but that is definitely something I'm looking at for consideration. So, because some folks, we're going to have good audio, good video in there, so that we can have a hybrid meeting, because I understand not everybody's going to be able to attend. And there are some efficiencies from doing it this way. So, but it'll give people choices. So.
Alden, if it's okay with you, I'll make an initial outreach to Colorado Mountain College Auditorium. It will seat 275 people, so it has plenty of room and it has good AV.
Okay, I will add that to the list then. So thank you, Ken. And then the final item that I have is our next meeting. We've already got a couple of agenda items coming up. We will be going over the White River PBO. We've got significant progress moving forward with that right now. That planning effort is kind of getting back on track to get the actual plan drafted for what needs to be done here and what actions we need to do in the White River. They will be presenting at our September meeting. But I know TNC, Jen Wellman, she's been working over there as well on that Maybell ditch, and they requested some time. So it looks like our September meeting is actually setting up to be an endangered species night. So that might be a topic that would be blended in there. So outside of that, I don't have any additional items. So if you do have an item for the agenda, please get it to me sooner than later, and we'll see what we can do to get that included within there. So anybody else have anything else? Otherwise, it's 9:01 and we're going to adjourn here. Y'all have a good night. God bless, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Al. Great job.
Thank you.